Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast, is available on all mainstream audio and video feeds. Find out how you can support the show by heading over to patreon.com/Critical Frames.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast. Finally, things have slowed down just a little bit, and we're past some of the E3 season, and while we still have plenty to talk about, it's definitely not as overwhelming as it has been prior, where we have like 30 stories pulled up to go through and try to knock them out. But we got some good stuff to talk about this week. I'm glad that it's a little more chill. I know Joe and I have been playing. I've probably been playing about as many games as normal, but I think Joe's been playing a little bit more, which is good to hear.
A little bit more, yeah.
So before we get into it, Joe, how are you doing? How was your week?
I'm good. Busy, in all honesty, even though obviously we're talking about playing a lot more games in terms of me. This week has actually been a lot less games than last week. So like after we recorded on Thursday, like it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday was when I played a shit ton of games. And then obviously Monday we're recording on Wednesday instead of Thursday today. So yeah, Monday to Wednesday this week has been a bit more like, I've been working a lot of overtime at work because we're basically signing off on the soft launch for the testers of the new website at work. So we're refining a lot of stuff. And the thing with website development and design is it kind of like the first 90% of laying out and stuff takes just as long as the last 10% of like refining everything. Because you're constantly just going back and forth on designs and in and out of menus and in and out of pages and stuff, and it's just like fuck. I've been playing Elden Ring's DLC. That's been very exciting. And I played a little bit more of Stalker, but Elden Ring has been my baby right now.
That's what everyone's been talking about this week.
And it's quite hot in the UK at the moment, which a lot of Americans will be like, "Oh, what are you talking about? It's not Texas heat, it's not Florida humidity." Ooh. But it's pretty hot right now. Like it averages between 25 degrees Celsius to low 30s Celsius, which is like 80s to mid 80s. So yeah, it's pretty warm right now, and obviously we don't have any AC in our houses and stuff. So it's kind of like you just have to sit here in a house that is brick and pretend everything's okay. And
I couldn't live without AC. Come on, bro. Couldn't do it.
Dude, when I went to West Virginia and saw you, it was really fucking warm. It was around this time of year, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, but my house was cool.
No. Your house was definitely cool. Yeah, But yeah, the thing with America, as soon as you step inside of someone's house, it's always like,
yeah, it's a jet of cool air.
But the problem with it is the thing with us is if we want to go outside, it's nowhere near as bad as America. Like West Virginia, Florida, assumingly so. I've not been there, but Florida, everyone always talks about Florida and Texas heat and stuff. California, and then obviously like I've been to North Carolina, so I know how that feels. And because you get so acclimatized to the AC over there, you just kind of like, I don't want to go outside, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's hot right now and it's lovely. I got burnt a little bit on my back, which is great fun.
We're pansies over here in America. You know, we eat all that fattening food, and when we walk outside, and we're like, nope, going back to my 68-degree house. So
must be nice
and air conditioned. Yeah. My week's just felt really busy. I don't know if I've done anything too interesting, but I had to get more stuff done to our car. We got it back, and then it wasn't working, so we had to take it back. Got that fixed. And then yesterday took my daughter to her first dance lessons. She's not quite 2 years old yet, so like the dance lessons are not what you'd expect. Like if you're picturing like her doing like ballerina dances, no, it's like a bunch of kids in a room just kind of flapping their arms.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of crazy. I've never done this before. Obviously, this is my only child, but like when you go to take them to their dance class, they're in like a studio room where they're dancing. And then they have like up above the ceiling, like a dark room for the parents to sit in and look at their kids through glass from above.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It was cool, but it was like, oh, wow. It's like, we're like, I don't know. We're just up here just looking down at all these kids. They don't know we're here. Yeah, no, it's kind of weird, but
yeah,
I liked
a little
it.
bit Blade Runner.
Yeah, because if you were in the room with them, then they wouldn't focus. But if you didn't get to see your kids at all, then most parents wouldn't be comfortable leaving your kids alone in a room with some strangers.
Yes,
So
100%. Yeah.
it was cool. But yeah, so basically that's pretty much it. Getting the car fixed. Yeah, daughter's dance lessons. I was slash am still playing Elden Ring. Obviously, I've killed 2 bosses. But and I'll get into this more when we get into what we're playing. But I've gone back to Nier Automata yet
Mm.
again. So this has been an ongoing saga throughout the podcast. So we'll talk about that then. But yeah, it's been a good week, but it's been a busy week. I'm ready to get to the weekend. We're only halfway there, so I'm feeling it, man. But
Mhm. Hell yeah, dude.
but yeah. So are you ready to get into the news already, Joe?
Let's do it.
We don't get a lot here, but this first one, luckily, I found this not too long before we started recording. And I think this is going to add a lot of heft, a lot of beef
Mm.
to our episode. It's pretty interesting. So one of the common conversations in the gaming industry today is how games are taking so long. Games announced and you might not see it for 4, 5, 6 years or something. In the case of like Elder Scrolls 10, and but today a former executive producer from Bioware who worked on things like Dragon Age posted a video titled "Why Do AAA Games Take So Long? Why do AAA games take so long?" And he goes over many points as to why games are taking so long. And I think at least it's for someone who feels like I have a decent knowledge of why games are taking longer, not because I have any kind of inside information, obviously, but just because I
Yeah.
spend so much time looking at news articles and reading what developers have to say. This was still kind of eye opening for me. So for somebody listening who doesn't really pay attention to any of that, it's probably pretty eye opening to them as well. So yeah, this comes from Mark Darrah's personal YouTube. Why do AAA games take so long? And I'll kind of go over the summary here of why they take so long, and then we'll go one by one, and Joe and I can just kind of talk about what's surprising to us, what we maybe already expected. Um,
Mhm.
so he has a total of 8 points as to why gaming or AAA development takes so long, and his first point is they don't actually take that long. And he says just because a game is announced doesn't mean it's actually being worked on. Once one of these big AAA titles are released, the majority of staff are likely still going to be working on that game, doing patches or working on DLC. And for a live service game, team sizes may actually increase on a title that just launched as opposed to decreasing. He also says studios rarely are able to work on multiple projects simultaneously and instead can only do one game at a time. No one at Bethesda, besides an incredibly small team, is likely working on The Elder Scrolls 6. So Rust, RIP in peace in the chat there. Um, this also implies that no one beyond 10 or so people are probably working on Mass Effect 4 right now, as Dragon Age is still finishing up development. That said, the actual development time with a full staff has probably still increased to some degree. So yeah, I mean, I think to some degree, I I knew this already. I'm guessing you probably did, Joe. Like the fact
Yeah.
that like when a game is announced, that doesn't mean that it's in full production. A lot of times, it's a CG trailer of here, like here's what we're planning on working, here's what we're in pre-production on,
Yep.
here's what the team's gonna do next after we're finished with the current project we're on. So like just because you see, oh, Fable was announced, maybe it's not in full production for like another year or more past that.
Mhm.
So like that particularly isn't surprising to me. Um, Another thing that maybe not surprising to me, but just maybe a little surprising to me, is he says studios rarely are able to work on multiple projects. Like that makes sense to me because when I think of in practice, like trying to work on 2 AAA games at the same time in
Mhm.
one studio, that seems like hard to imagine that working out. But at the same time, I would say over the years, I mean decades, we've heard of studios being like, oh, Naughty Dog has got their team doing like Uncharted and their team doing Last of Us. And I think to some degree, I was picturing sizable development going on 2 different projects at once. And he's saying that doesn't really happen. You maybe have a couple guys in the corner as the
Mm.
second team, just kind of getting things laid out as an outline, maybe for when the full team does come over. So that's
Yes.
maybe a little bit more eye opening. But altogether, I think this probably wasn't the most surprising. This is just point one of 8. What do you have to say, Joe? Does any of this stick out to you?
No, it doesn't necessarily surprise me, and in many ways, it lines up with what developers have said in the past when it comes to like Halo Infinite and that announcement reveal trailer. They put these announcement reveal trailers out literally as feelers for all the developers in the industry, obviously that aren't working on that project at the time, that are looking for jobs, looking to get hired, and it's like, guys, come work on this stuff. And it's something that obviously gamers don't necessarily pick up on just because they're so enraveled within the hype that is, oh, Halo Infinite's coming out, or Dragon Age, the Veilguard's coming out, or whatever, and it's like, obviously they don't have the privy to what those things are, but once you're
Mhm.
in that environment and you're in that sort of like, oh well, I mean, once you've done the sort of like legwork and you've actually been in a studio like this, it's kind of like, oh well, that's what this is. They're calling, in many ways they're calling for people to get hired for more developers on the stuff. So, and then around that time you normally get, obviously, actual like resumes being sent in, and also like applications being sent in, and also obviously job offers sent out to, whether it's Indeed or Monster or whatever, depending on the Glassdoor as well, depending on the obviously the site you choose. But yeah, not surprising to me at all. And in many ways, this is the kind of stuff that goes on when it comes to web development as well, and web design. In my world, is that like when we started doing this new website and stuff, and designing it from the ground up, it was just me. And as we've gone along in the pipeline, various people have gotten involved, and we're a small company anyway, of only like 5 or 6. But instead of just being just be me, now it's my line manager, my project manager, and also the actual editor of the company, the owner of the company, getting more involved with the nuance of what they want and stuff like that. And that is very much a thing that goes down the pipeline in various elements of uh you know industry,
So you
essentially.
you can only imagine because you're doing a website like now picture the highest end AAA video game trying to picture like
Mm,
how like picture your job like you how do I want to word this two entire websites being
yes.
built at the exact same time,
Hmm.
like that wouldn't really be feasible for each to have a full like contribution going on to
No.
that. Yeah.
No, and this just rolls into like what pre-production is. It's a phase of concept and conceptualization, just like websites are, but just on a much grander scale in game design and development. And yeah, I mean, like, it's one of those things where that's why you have a whole year of a small amount of people, or 2 years potentially, depending on the project, but normally a year. I think of Anthem and stuff, where it's like, oh well, like, try it out, go for it, get an overall design, get a rough test going, get some concept art going and stuff like that. And then the publisher kind of comes in and starts to like have a look at it and stuff. And that's one of the reasons why things like Anthem and stuff, bringing it back to, Mark Darrah and Bioware and stuff. That's why when they came along, it was like, where is everything? Because, you have this slow sort of chipping away of what the concept is going to be, until obviously the point is, right, well, we need to greenlight this and actually put it into, actual development in many ways, proper development. So, yeah, not surprising at all. But yeah.
All right, let's move on to point number 2. He says size. Big games or forever games, games that you can play for a really long time, which includes open world games, live service games, etc., sell really well. So publishers want more forever games made, which means bigger team sizes to create more content and less of those 7 to 10 hour experience type games. Due to economics, it can actually make more sense for a publisher to take several swings at a mega hit forever game than release multiple smaller single titles. The reward for a successful forever game is just too high. So all of this, I would say, is like definitely something I was already aware of. Like obviously, every company, we've talked about this with Sony specifically. Like if they can just get one huge live service game that makes tons of money, that could be enough to support all their other games, and they don't need more of them. But what's more surprising to me is that he loops in open world games to this, and unless I'm missing something, I mean, he specifies open world games separate from live service games. I've never really thought of open world games as forever games.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could say like, something like a Skyrim, where obviously that's
Mm.
completely single player open world and it's still being monetized and played today.
Maybe
Yeah.
he's looking at it from the perspective that like these open world games have like small elements of live service models in them. They're not necessarily live service games
Mhm.
first and foremost, but they have like microtransactions in them. Like, you think of, I don't know, like Assassin's Creed with Valhalla and stuff. You can buy costumes, you can buy little stuff from the store and all that stuff. And
Yeah, maybe.
potentially that's
Yeah.
what he's thinking of. But I think it
To
also,
be fair, then Joe, like Resident Evil 4 has that, and it's not an open world game, so it feels
yeah,
very specific to the
I think
open
it's
world.
I think Yeah, I think the reason potentially that could be to sort of strengthen my point with that is open world games will obviously keep the attention longer
Hmm.
than like a Resident Evil 4 will, which is what, like a 10 to 15 hour narrative, if that.
Yeah.
And in many ways, like by you keeping that retention going of players, you increase your chances of people visiting the store. And also, like, I think there's something to be said about some form of game design where you're, especially in an RPG like Assassin's Creed or something like that. I'm using this because it's the strongest example I can give. When you have a game that is so RPG centric, so grindy, so um, progression heavy and stuff like that. You kind of train your consumer base, your players, to accept that, and then that I think potentially can bleed into, well, I want to get like XP boosters, I want to get costumes, I want to get this, I want to get that because I want to collect everything, and then that kind of like kleptomania OCD potentially comes into it. Um, so maybe
See,
that's what he's going
well,
at. I
see,
don't
and
know.
I think you're making great points, but the angle that I would actually take, and this is not my original idea, but it is something I completely agree with. Once again, Colin from Sacred Symbols saying that so many gamers see a dollars per hour when they go to
Yes.
buy games. And I think that's completely true. Like his point, Colin's point is that that's dumb. Like it
Mm.
shouldn't just be because like 5 great hours can be worth more than 60 subpar hours. And he's an advocate of like not doing the dollars per hour thing. And I find myself like mostly agreeing with him, but I do find myself also really seeing value in hours per dollar at the same time. So like I think there is some of that that's okay, but I think maybe when he's talking about like big forever games, you're more likely to sell to a wider audience this game that they know they can get 60 to 100 to 150 hours out of than a
Mm.
game that's going to be beaten in 10, because obviously something like Call of Duty sells itself on the live service and the multiplayer.
Yeah.
It could never really sell itself on the 4 hour campaign. But you got something like Skyrim or Dragon Age, which Dragon Age is going to say, like the Veilguard is going to say, oh, this is a 50-hour experience. But if you play all the different ways with the different conversation options and the different builds, this could potentially be worth 300. And then people are going to go, oh, I got no problem popping down $70. So I think maybe, the way that he's spinning forever games is, if you're not going live service where you're constantly updating and getting microtransactions, you are getting people with these buzzword, this big of a map, this many hours for the same price as another game. That's kind of where
Mm.
I'm at, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. I get that.
I think both what you said and I said does go into that, but this does open my mind to thinking about, because we're one of the common sentiments in gaming right now too is like, oh, I'm sick of another open world game, or like,
Mhm.
oh, it's another open world. Like I would say after the term live service, the most eye rolling thing people probably hear is open world, right? And that
Yeah.
they kind of go together. It's like, well, maybe
Yeah.
these are the two types of ways to really, get a success or get the most money out of your game. But I mean, of course, we have other games that make it work without doing those things. Like we both mentioned, Resident Evil 4 already. Like
Yeah.
that's not open world. That's not live service. Obviously, there's some microtransactions there, but I would wager most people don't use them. I think when it comes to that, it's an IP awareness and a confidence in the product that it will sell many many copies. Which in the case of Resident Evil 4, it did. So
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Bang on, dude. We're in line.
moving to number 3. Fidelity Death Cult. Developers that push for higher fidelity, concerned with the way particular hair strands sway and land on a shoulder, create further delays, although they do not contribute to larger team sizes. Notes this can be a trap for developers pushing for these ultra realistic graphics with super fidelity physics. Comparison to success of lower fidelity titles like Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring as proof that gamers don't care that much about extra fidelity. There's still one more bullet here, but it's important to note, just in case someone wonders, like, oh, lower fidelity titles like Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring, obviously
Mhm.
those titles look amazing, but Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring to like a Senua's
Horizon.
Saga,
Yeah,
Hellblade
or
2,
Horizon,
yeah,
Forbidden
where it's like
West or something. Yeah.
peach fuzz on her face type
Yeah.
thing. Like, obviously, Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3 don't have that level of attention to detail, but that's his point exactly, is that most gamers don't care.
And that lines up.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
go
was
ahead.
just saying that
No, no,
lines
go
up.
ahead. Yeah.
That lines up exactly with potentially like one of the reasons why Hellblade is took so long in many ways. It's one of the most
Mhm.
gorgeous video games ever made, and to have how long did it take you to beat, and how long did they pitch the tenure of that?
Uh,
experience to be.
for Hellblade,
Yeah, Hellblade
I mean, they
2.
pitched it around 8 hours, and I
Yeah.
think I did take upwards of 7, but a
Mm.
lot of the publications that did a review said they beat it right at 5. But
Yes.
I didn't have that experience, but I don't know.
Yeah. And I think in many ways it's like that's probably one of the reasons, they spent so long on this Unreal Engine, meta human, and high fidelity showcase going on that it was just like I get it, like it looks dope and stuff, but maybe like it doesn't need to look this good
Mhm.
for the hours that you're in and stuff. But
Yeah.
if that's what they want to push for, it makes sense. But also maybe that's why it took so long. I mean, it's one of
They
the most
did the
gorgeous
same
video
thing
games ever
on
made.
PlayStation 4 with the Order 1886. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
was a
Yeah, yeah.
stunner, but it just had no the game was over in, like, 5 hours or something.
Yes,
5, 6
100%. Yeah.
hours, so continuing on. However, notes that gamers have pushed back on asset reuse, even when the assets are perfectly fine. So developers may fear to release a new title with reused animations and assets for fear of gamer backlash, and thus create more work to do new assets and animations. But there is little research done that shows gamers actually don't buy titles because of significant asset reuse. Again, From Software is a good example, despite tons of reuse. So this is something I feel proud to say that I've been saying for many years. Is
You
I
have?
wish developers would reuse assets more often. Like, make a game in the same engine, use that same I don't know, castle wall design or enemy aesthetic, reuse enemies here and there. And I think FromSoft does do that a decent amount. I mean, they obviously also create a lot of new original stuff, which makes it balances it out well. But like, you know, I do hear gamers all the time that like getting super pissed off when something's reused, and I think it's just ridiculous. I can recall when Forbidden West was first shown off, like Joe had just mentioned, Horizon Forbidden West. Gamers immediately noticed that her like scaling down a mountain with like a rope was the
Yeah.
exact same
Oh,
animation
yeah.
as Zero
Yeah.
Dawn, and
Oh.
and I was like, who gives a
Another
shit? Like,
another one was God of War Ragnarok with the boats. Like
oh
the
yeah,
boat
like him
pushing.
kicking the boat
Yeah.
off. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, why would you want? I mean, this isn't something that they can change in an hour.
Yeah.
Like, this is a massive amount of work, and I just don't understand. It's like, I don't see it as lazy. I see it as smart use of assets and time and money. It's not affecting the experience at all. So I would love for assets to be reused more often. I mean, look at how many people. Once again, we're citing some Xbox games here more often than we normally would, but like ODST, Halo ODST is one of those games that
Yeah.
is just beloved by so many. And that was a game that the development team said they really enjoyed working on. It was quick and easy. They could do it in less than a year and a half because it
Indeed.
was literally the same engine and a lot of the same assets as Halo 3.
Yeah.
And I just wish games would do that more often. I mean, obviously we saw some of that with God of War 2018 to Ragnarok. And I know a lot of people were like, oh, Ragnarok is basically just an expansion or a glorified DLC. It's like, that is so asinine to say. But like, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to like go back to the drawing board and just start all over again for
Yeah.
Ragnarok? If they had done that, it would have taken longer, it would have been less profitable, and we wouldn't have got as much content. So
Yeah.
I'm always like up for reusing assets and animations. And if I would be willing to like offer the opposite side of the opinion, which is like, oh, but sometimes it's bad. If I could think of one time, I
Mm.
personally don't know that I can think of one time. I actually, like, I'm playing through Nier Automata right now, and like, that game is heavy on asset reuse. Like, being in the thick of it right now,
Yeah.
like, it is, I mean, it is constantly using the same environments, having you stop and talk to the same people. And while, not to get ahead of myself and talk about what we're playing, but while I would say that it does become slightly noticeable in Nier Automata because, it has like a 3 playthrough thing where you play through the game 3 playthroughs
Yep.
to actually get the full story. It does become somewhat noticeable, but for how much game there is there and how long you play it, like the ratio of how noticeable it is to how much game you get is very small. So I'm
Indeed.
still like I'm giving Platinum Games a huge pat on the back with Nier Automata because I am going to the same environments and talking to the same people so much,
Yeah.
but they use them so like geniusly that it works really well. And I would just like to see more developers do that and like be smart about it. So I don't know. And I'll pass it over to you entirely here, Joe. But can you think of one game where the asset reuse like took you out of the experience or was really bothersome? Like, I can't. I'm sure it's out there, but
No. I mean, there's been games in the past that have done that. Like, shout out to Colin Diente, but when I played Trepang 2,
Yeah.
which is a PC game, and I can't remember whether it was on Unity or Unreal. It's like I think it's on Unreal. I think. Um, that is like when I was playing it, I was like, I've seen these walls before, I've seen these environments before. And granted, I played it when it was in its demo period.
Yeah.
So like basically everything that like I talk about now is heavily outdated and might not be the case. And I remember saying to myself, like, this is like got no style to it. Like I like the
Mm.
gameplay because it has the slow-mo feature and the gun fu stuff and like Fear does, because that's what it takes inspiration from with the gameplay, but it doesn't have the horror vibe and the style that Fear did on the 7th generation. Nor does it have like its own style in many ways. It just feels like too clean and too unpolished. But again, it's because it was in its sort of testing phase, in its demo phase. I think it was in beta or something. And that was the only time I felt like, just in general, it felt like an Unreal asset flip. But aside from that, in terms of AAA development, no. And in all honesty, like this comes back to kind of how we think about our games, how we think about our generational divides, because like, we think about, I don't know, God of War. Let's take God of War for example. God of War 1 to 2 are very very similar in how they are from in the PS2 days. From the polygon counts, obviously, to the style and stuff. It's very consistent. And then when you hit God of War 3, it's like, oh shit, like this is way different. Like as far as I'm aware, it was on a whole different runtime. Not necessarily. I heard it was on a completely new DirectX at the time, but I'm not quite sure if that's the case because obviously PS3 used cell architecture, so I don't think it even used DirectX, but it uses like a very modified, changed version of it. So it was on a completely different runtime, the first of its kind, obviously. So it could bring in so much depth and so many like unique ways of like doing like texture mapping and stuff like that to optimize the game as you go through and to make it look better than it actually is. Um, and then obviously you have that generational divide massively from the PS2 to the PS3 when it comes to those, the
And to
second
your
God of
point,
War.
they reused what God of War 3's like looked like for Ascension as
Yes,
well. Like,
exactly. Yeah, 100%. And then so then when you get to God of War 2018 to God of War Ragnarok, it's like obviously people are going to look at it and go, well, obviously God of War 2018 was obviously in 2018 when the PS4 was out, and obviously the PS5 wasn't out. So like, why aren't we getting such a difference between the PS4 and the PS5? It's like, well, in all honesty, it's because one, they're on the same architecture, and two, there's no bloody reason not to, and they're also in the same Norse mythos. They're in the same saga. So why would they want to change radically everything they've built up until that
yeah.
point when that amount of work can go into other things and be better for it? And in many ways, like obviously people can obviously take issue with things like Ragnarok's length and stuff, but in my opinion, objectively, like I do think God of War Ragnarok is an objectively better game from a game design standpoint
And we got it in
over
4 years.
2018, and
Yeah, we
we
got
got it in 4 years exactly. So I don't know. I don't really stand like just like you, even though I'm not like you always say like you would rather games to kind of like cap off, right? To like chill out a little bit with the ballooning of
mm,
development costs and stuff like that. Am I
mhm.
right in quoting you in that in
Yeah,
many
yeah, yeah,
ways?
yeah.
I don't necessarily think we should hard cap in that regard. We should always keep evolving and stuff, but I always try and call for developers to use controllers in new ways, try and innovate in game designs in terms of how Kojima did with like the save files with Psycho Mantis on the PlayStation 1 and stuff like that. Like I always call for innovation in how you view your games, how the witness asks you to
Mhm.
reappropriate puzzles and concepts in your mind and stuff like that. And or like how Half-Life did physics, Half-Life 2 did physics engines and stuff. Like that's what I'm calling for. I'm not necessarily calling for more fluff on Aloy's skin for, PlayStation
Yeah.
5 graphics. I don't care about that, or new animations or new assets. That
I
is
think there's
it's the most surface level like criticism
yeah.
you can give from a presentational standpoint that I think more people should or less people should care about, in all honesty.
Yeah,
So
I think there's a lot of evidence that supports the argument, though, that having more of a limited budget or not letting it balloon so big, reusing assets and stuff can lead to a game that people just like more. I mean,
yeah.
I would say that I'm only using this as an example because it's a perfect example I happen to be playing, but I would say Nier Automata is, more loved than a lot of games that are very expensive.
Yes.
I read that Nier Automata's total development cost was less than $20 million,
Holy
which
shit. Yeah.
which is insane because like Nier Automata is a really good game and to some one of the best games ever made, and we're talking about like they had to sell over 10 million copies of Spider-Man to make.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure I can say, already, I think I like Nier Automata better than any of the Spider-Man games. And that's not to say that it isn't.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm just not as attached to the Spider-Man games as other people,
Okay.
but I think I like Nier Automata more than the Spider-Man games. And, like if I like, for instance, I like Last of Us more than Nier Automata,
Mhm.
but like Last of Us is over 10 times the amount of budget,
Yes.
and it's not that far away. Like it's not like a 10 out of 10 to a 1 to 10. Like they're a
Yeah.
lot closer than that. So it's like, I don't know. I do the one thing I'll agree with you on, and I think Josh has said before, and
Mhm.
I get his point too, is like there is some level in which you don't want to stymie the potential of someone who could present the next great big idea. Like
Mhm.
maybe we have a game that is like Super Mario 64 levels of mind blowing,
Yes.
but they needed $400 million to make it. And it sells 100 million copies and it's hugely profitable. And it didn't really matter that it sold 400 million. So, like, we don't want to stymie that ability. But I would say it seems to me, in my opinion, more often than not, we could have had great games without
Mm.
it being 200, $300 million. So,
Yes. And in many ways, like, there are games where actually too much budget has actually stymied
yes.
the overall, like, development and
Star
flow.
Citizen.
Star Citizen is one.
Yeah.
Tarkov could potentially be one with these sunk cost fallacies for these whales to come in and basically support these teams, if they want to. But I'm also thinking of things like, Too Human,
Yeah.
on the seventh generation, from Silicon Knights. Like, in many ways, like that was a game that flew way too close to the sun, and in many ways, it was due to the budget. It was like, oh, we have this big game that's going to revolutionize the industry, change control schemes in terms of how third person hack and slashes are and stuff, and it was just like, really? Like, calm down, guys. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, don't rely so much on your budget. And in many ways, like, the only time it's kind of crazy because most of the time creativity is flourishes when there are limitations in place.
Mhm.
Not potentially from a budget perspective, potentially not from a budget perspective, but also
Usually time, probably. Yeah.
time, but also like just from like hardware limitations is one. Again, I go back to Kojima. The reason why the stealth genre mainstream wise exists is because in 1987 Kojima had to make a stealth game on the MSX2 because the hardware limitations were too great to create an action game that Konami wanted. Konami was like, dude, like, we want an action game on this platform. Can you do it? And he was like, not really, because this platform is basically too underpowered. Because the amount of sprites on screen and stuff, it couldn't do it, which is hilarious to think about now that what we have now with like
Yeah.
Horizon and God of War and stuff. Now it's like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Like, there's no peach fuzz. I'm out.
I can't zoom in to like the microscopic pores on Aloy's
Yeah.
face. Nah, crap. But yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes the lacking in budget, time, and platform, or whatever is hardware, sort of specifications, is something that can push innovation. So yeah, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah, totally. We'll move on to number 5, iteration. Today, every system is iterated on constantly, whereas in the past, you would often create and implement a whole system just prior to launching a title. You basically used to ship your prototype or second iteration. Now, due to complexity mentioned above and publishers being very risk averse, systems are constantly iterated upon and tested. And that also includes bringing in outside groups to test and give feedback on these systems. This kind of goes into what Joe's already touched on with, like, back in the day, it might have been like, oh, God of War, here's the system. Okay, new God of War, it's a new system. Okay, another God of War, it's a new system. But nowadays, because people are risk adverse, it's the same system that's iterated on constantly and constantly over and over and over again. They've been using this same system repeatedly. And Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have too much more to add to that. I think you pretty much touched on it, but it's having people come in and learn something that has already been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about on my other podcast, we talked about this back in the day about how 343 had so much trouble
Mm.
getting stuff going on developing Halo Infinite because they were running spaghetti code that has been iterated on since the first Halo game.
In the Blam
And
engine, yeah.
basically, yeah, so basically you get new people in, you hire them, and you spend 6 months to a year just getting them to understand how to work the game before they can actually contribute at all. And with every AAA developer now having some level of that, probably not as egregious as the Blam engine in Halo, but like, iterating on what they've had for years, and people having to come in and learn, okay, you're not going to be here from the ground floor. Like, I mean, even like, look at like Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, they're running on that Decima engine, which is
Yep.
also what Kojima's been using for Death Stranding. So you have them both iterating on, because obviously work that Kojima may have done using their Decima system, he may have done things to the engine that then now Guerrilla can iterate on
Yeah.
from what he's added to it, and then back and forth, and then the next Horizon game will have it, and who knows who else will use it. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, on one hand, it's really smart, I think, to iterate, and that's why he brings up being very risk averse here, because when you iterate on the system, there's less risk that you could spend 3 years on a new engine and then it sucks and you spend all that
Yeah.
money and time. But at the same time, getting everyone up to speed, new and old, on this system that has been added to over and over again.
Mm.
Anything to add to that, Joe? Joe, I mean,
I
you kind
think,
of,
like,
yeah,
to kind of tout Sony's horn in this, in this regard, in this context, is that, like, it's fascinating that, like, we talk about Halo Infinite, we talk about 343 developing that engine in a vacuum for so long. And in many ways, Bethesda is the same way. Like, they're sitting there on this, like, proprietary engine, um,
creation engine,
the
that's
creation
been
engine.
renamed but it's
Yeah,
the same engine still.
yeah, that is based on the Gamebryo engine from 1996, I think it is. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, dude, like, I get it. Like, you don't want to, like, curtail to, like, obviously Unreal at this point and Epic, because then it's like, well, there's other issues then, like with
You lose your
homogenizing the
identity
industry
a
and
bit.
stuff, lose your identity, stuff like that. I mean, even if you look at like Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, or Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater remake, it's like there's part of that that's kind of lost its style in many ways because of the Unreal Engine, in terms of the textures and the environments and stuff, even though they are still trying to be as close to the,
Yeah.
to the Konami engine or the Fox engine, back in the day. But um, yeah, I think it's fascinating because you look at like PlayStation, and I'm touching on what you said there. It's like people share engines, they share various proprietary engines within uh, within their studios, and what it ends up doing is just allowing that load to be spread a little bit
Mhm.
through the years. And I don't just mean like within one project spreading the load within one studio. It's like you said, you pass it off. The Decima engine is passed off to Kojima Productions, and Kojima Productions might pass it back, and they work with each other. Engineers constantly work back, like them incredibly talented engineers constantly go back and forth and talk about the programming, the optimization, the functionality, the infrastructure of that engine, and obviously animators will speak on it and how it goes to work on it. But then you've also got like Sony Santa Monica using their own proprietary engine, and in many ways, like, we still don't know what these are. We obviously know what Decima is. Decima is a very popular one. But I mean, like, you got XDev and stuff on the PS4 for like smaller titles and stuff like that. But then you also have Helldivers, which has this very outdated, retrofitted engine that is just for them in many ways.
Yeah.
And I think what's great about like Sony in this regard is they, like I said, they can spread that load, they can share the load, and they can work together very easy, instead of having this tight, isolated, confined experience where this one team is an island trying to create something
Yeah.
from rubble in many ways. And
Sony's had great synergy between their teams for a long time now, and that's why you see that's just non-existent over at Microsoft.
I think when the PS4
Pardon.
generation was rolling around, they looked at it and they was like, we can't do what PS3 did. Like, we can't do
Yeah.
that again, where like we have this horrible cell infrastructure where third party people are having issues and first party are basically having to like somehow cram it through this very tight funnel just to get it to the finish line and stuff, because it's just not the right way of going about it, and we're just hamstringing our developers. And yeah, I think I think Xbox needs to take a lesson from them in many ways, and I think that there's a lot to be learned from sharing resources and various infrastructure and platforms. So yeah.
Absolutely. Moving over to point number 6, delay inception. New technologies, constant iteration, and responses to rival titles can create a loop in which the actual inception of a project is constantly being put off because the team is constantly responding to new things than actually settling down and developing. This immediately just reminds me of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League,
Mm,
because we heard the behind the scenes of like basically when this game started, when Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League started, it was like, here's the plan for the game, and then they developed for a few months. It's like, no, actually, we should do this thing,
yeah.
and then they'd have to stop what they were doing, start back over again. Then they're like, oh, we should add this, and like, well, adding that's going to be massive it's going to take this long. But if we add that, then there's this problem. It's like, oh, let's go back to this. It's like, well, we already developed in this direction. So it's easy for me as a consumer to be like, well, I don't understand why you would do this. Like, why can't you settle on a vision? I mean, especially since pre-production usually takes such a long time, anyways. Like, why can't you settle on a vision and just stick with it to the end?
Mm.
But when you have so many investors, money on the line, people's jobs, people's livelihoods, there's that. What's the word? What's the term I'm looking for? There's a temptation to just look at the industry trends and see how you can pivot what you're doing to get ahead of it and to make more money and stuff. And I think
Yeah.
that's in the case of something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I think that's what it was. It was like, okay, look at this. Like maybe in the beginning, maybe when they started that game, they're like loot boxes, and then it was like, oh, people don't like loot boxes; those are pretty much going away. Okay, live service. How do we turn this into a live service? It doesn't really work as a loot box thing. It's like, oh, but people like us for our single players. So let's also stick with that. And then it's like this hodgepodge of everything. And I think probably some of the best examples of it working out for people is when they built something good to begin with. And I don't even
Yeah.
know, this might be a terrible example, but I think of Fortnite, where like
Okay.
Epic created a very stable, very strong base game that had a lot of, it was modular in Fortnite. Then the game came out and it was like this survival type game nobody really wanted to play.
Mm.
And then PUBG came out, and I think PUBG, I can't remember which released first. PUBG probably wasn't an official release, but anyways, basically PUBG took off with its battle royale formula,
Yep.
and Epic had created something so strong from a foundational level that was modular in Fortnite that they were able to create a battle royale mode for Fortnite. And now
Mm.
Fortnite, as you know it, if I say the word Fortnite, people picture the battle royale. They don't
Yeah.
picture what
Save
it
the world.
originally was.
Yep.
Yeah, Save the World was originally was. Nobody cares about that. So them creating a good product at first enabled them to adapt after the fact. Whereas if they had tried to, in the middle of Fortnite's development, make it something, I don't know it would have worked out that way. I don't know if that's the best example, but that's just what came to my mind. Over to you, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, like you were right. Battlegrounds came out March, April, May, June, July, 5 months before Fortnite Battle Royale. So
Okay.
Fortnite was responsive to what PUBG
Yeah.
was in many ways. But yeah, I mean, you could even use Helldivers. Helldivers in
Mm.
that regard, Helldivers 2, from the get go, they knew what they were doing. And even like, our last report on Helldivers last episode about them not making a single player game. No, we're doing this multiplayer game. Go away, leave us alone, let us do what we want, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, and in many ways, like this fits into what I've said about Tarkov in the past. It's a game that is still in early access development, and it's barely in 0.15 of beta. They call it. They call it a beta, but let's be honest,
Yeah.
it's basically finished
The
at this
game.
point.
Yeah.
And it's just a sunk cost fallacy. But they release things like Arena, which is like a PvP mode, like 5v5, I think, or 6v6 PvP mode, for people that have the highest pass, the highest version of the game. Well, at the time, the highest version of the game until they released that terrible. I can't remember what it was even called, but that £100 extra version, which was ridiculous. And it kind of just gets to a point where it's like you guys have got so much like feature creep going on that it just feels like honestly, gamers, including myself, we kind of get sick of it, especially if it's out. If it's out, it's already been released, it's early access, and then like you add, or even if it's not out, it's just like, well, what is going on with this game? And
Mhm.
it puts people off. The constant shifting of direction, even if it's not
Yeah.
quite clear. I mean, like I said in the past, Suicide Squad from the get go was a game that was just all over the place when it came to
What is this,
you
and what do
know
they even want? What do they think we want? And
it never
I don't
yeah
want any of this. Yeah.
it never felt like it was for anyone, and that's such a shame. But yeah, so makes sense, dude.
Moving on to number 7, culture and reducing crunch. A new reason that is not very common has to do with attempts to reduce crunch. While crunch has many harmful effects, it does create a sense of completion urgency, letting the team know it's time to stop refining and tweaking and complete things. The removal of crunch has not always replaced this completion urgency, but again notes that the majority of studios are still crunching, so it's not that common to see this effect. So I have kind of a maybe a hot take here, but like
Mm.
I don't think crunch is good. And I know as someone who just works I work the most regular job ever. I stock at a hospital. I stock, it's not something that you have to have a special profession for. It's not a college degree related job. I go in, I work 8 hours a day, stocking shelves and ordering stuff for people.
Mm.
And I don't like staying late, and I don't like, working longer hours or coming in on the weekend. So like I don't think crunch is necessarily good or healthy, but the one big difference here between what I'm talking about and video game studios is this is creative people doing something they're passionate about. For me, it's just, collecting a paycheck. It's going and doing
Yes.
a job and getting money. And I think from all that, not that this counts for a lot. Obviously, I'm not in development. I'm not there to see it and see the effect it has on people's lives. But from a lot of the gaming documentaries I've watched and like the end product in the game that I've played, it seems very clear that like some of the best games required people to really push themselves to get it to that point. Like, and I think to some extent, to have these games as good as they are, it's a team pushing themselves both in
Mm,
time and stress and effort. And like, I'm not saying that that's necessarily good. I'm not even saying maybe it's worth it, because I think we know for sure from like, not once again, here we are bringing up Halo, but like Marty O'Donnell, the composer at Bungie, said back in the day for Halo 2, they pushed so hard, so many hours, so many ways that people got divorced, people's
yeah.
families broke apart. In my opinion, it is not worth a divorce or losing your family
No.
to make a better game. But that is what happened, and what it did result in was an amazing video game.
Yeah.
So it's not so much as like excusing the crunch. It's not so much saying that it's worth it, but that crunch does lead to a better product a lot of times. And I know there's like proven studies that like crunch results in like poor optimized work. And I think that's a fact, but like that's, even though the work you may do being crunched may be worse, it's still more work being done than if you weren't doing it at all. You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
And I think like, and the thing is, it's like it's not possible for a team to just get. Sometimes a team does get like a year delay and another year to work on it,
Yep.
but they don't just get a 3-year delay. Like that, a lot of times it would take a 3 to 5 year delay for these developers to get their vision exactly as they want it meticulously. It's always coming
Mm,
down to what they have to sacrifice, and what the end product is what they were able to do with the time they had, and them pushing themselves. So I think, and I think it's clear here he's saying it's not very common that this is even a thing. People don't really like face value. We like to talk about how crunch is being reduced and like people are doing things to reduce crunch, but I think it's very clear here, like the way this is said, like he's pretty much saying like, yo, crunch is still going on pretty much
yeah.
everywhere. And like,
Yeah.
even though gamers don't want to hear it and journalists don't want to hear it, like this shit is not going to get done if it's
Yeah.
not crunched.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I have to say about it. What do you
Yeah,
think,
I
Joe?
mean, like every time I think about crunch, the funniest thing, I don't even think about like Halo 2 because that's what everyone thinks of. Like that's the
Yeah.
big elephant in the room. I always think of like God of War 2018 because like that.
Hmm.
If anyone here has
I've
watched
watched that documentary too. Yeah.
the Raising Kratos documentary, the
Such a good
amount of
documentary.
amazing documentary, one of my favorites, and it's just like it's so fucking like raw because there's a part when the team, the Sony's production filming team, basically interview. I think it's about 3/4 way through the documentary, and they basically asked Sharon Studstill and Yumi Yang, who are the uh, executive producers and producer. I don't know if that's respectively, but they're their titles. I don't know which one is attributed to each. And they basically like Yumi Yang is like she explains it. She explains like how how much toll it's put on her and her family and stuff. But then like it goes over to Sharon Studstill, and she basically just like she can't answer it. Like she wells up, and she's like, I can't like answer this right now. I'm not ready to answer that because the amount of pressure that like crunch places on things, and for that reason alone, like I'll never, not saying that you are Brian, but I'll never advocate for crunch in any situation because it
Yeah.
genuinely, like you said, it destroys families, it destroys relationships, it destroys people, not just relationships, but just like individuals, like sleeping under desks and shit. It's just not healthy. And then you get situations like Corey Barlog on release day getting like 90s in the Metacritic, and one of the best games of all time for God of War 2018, and he's literally crying, like he's
Mhm.
crying on like a 480p video because like on the live stream because he's just so relieved that people are liking his game. Like
But
that's
to
all he
further
wants.
your point too, I'm pretty sure him and his wife broke up after that game came out, and I think they're back together now. But I'm pretty sure they
Oh,
separated,
that's a little
which is
factoid I didn't know.
probably told. Yeah, I mean, go, feel free to look that up
Mm,
afterwards and correct me on that, Joe. But I'm pretty sure they separated because probably a lot to do with him not being around and the crunch and everything. And like,
Mm,
I mean, and that's what I know I've completely interjected on you here, but like, that's what I'm saying is like, even if the whole world acknowledges crunch is bad
yeah.
and the whole world acknowledges that it's not worth your family being broken up for this game to exist, that doesn't mean that people who did crunch didn't end up making a product that was better, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
just if we
It's
all
not mutually
agree,
exclusive. Yeah.
yeah, like the morality we can all agree on, but we
Yeah.
can also say like this project over here would have never been this good without the crunch. It doesn't excuse it. It's just the literal facts of the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. 100%. And I've done it. Like, like all this week is crunch because we're
That's what you
getting
were saying at the beginning. Yeah, we're
yeah,
working on the website.
and it tires you out, and like literally, you don't have an afternoon. It's not like I work long hours normally. Like I work a normal 9 to 5 job, but like um, it's one of those things where when that crunch happens, it's like you literally don't have an evening, and when you don't have an evening, you start to realize very quickly that like the week's going very fucking quickly,
Mhm.
and it's like, dude, like I've had no time for myself, and
Yeah.
you're immediately back there, like I
Well,
mean,
what happened?
I've never slept in an office, for job purposes, but like, dude, like it sucks. It sucks in many ways, but I think this is one of the various stepping stones in this industry getting some form of unionization, getting some form of workers' rights
Mhm.
going on, and truly like knuckling down in terms of representing individuals like that. So yeah, hopefully
See,
that's
that's
sorted.
what I
They
think.
find a middle ground.
That's what and I'm sure like it wouldn't work out the way that I picture it, but I picture a world where, let's say, game developers are unionized. Let's say they do have a more harder cap on budgets, not in
Mm,
300, 400 million area. I would like to see that, like, if those restrictions were placed on development studios, like, would we start to see them, like, gaming development be explored more in like a near automata
mm,
way? Like,
mm.
where it's like, okay, so we've told Bethesda that they can't crunch their employees and they can't spend more than $250 million.
Yeah.
What does that now look like? It could either be Elder Scrolls takes 20 years to come out, or it could be the game is not as ambitious and it I mean, it still can be a great game, but maybe it's not as big. It's not as, maybe the fidelity's not as high. And
And this
then
is
you
the
get
hardest part. How do you communicate that to your fans, to your
yeah,
established
well,
player base?
it's only going to probably be bad. I mean, probably only bad PR, right? Like, there's no way to. It doesn't matter how much you say. Oh well, Johnny gets to go home to his kids,
Yeah, yeah,
and and also the budget is in a place where it's much more easier for our studio to be healthy, profitable.
yeah.
It's not going to matter. People are going to be like, I want my big game. I want my
I don't
like
give a shit.
why can't I
Fuck
see
Johnny.
the yeah, why can't I see my Nord's facial hairs, like the pores behind it? Like,
Yeah,
why can't I
yeah,
see that? But
yep,
I mean, it would be nice, like, if we were in an industry where everyone did have those restrictions, eventually the industry would get used to, like, okay, this is what you have to be used to. And
yep.
don't get me wrong, like, what I'm saying we have to get used to isn't bad. I'm still talking about budgets and development time that's way higher than something like Nier Automata. I'm just saying
Bro,
not
in all
10 years and
honesty,
400 million. Like,
I'd take a fucking 10-year cycle every time, 15-year cycle, 20 years. I don't care. Like, there's too many games coming out now as it
there's too many
is.
games, and the thing is too is like, and not to this really sounds like we're getting on like a touch grass like kind of diatribe, but it's like,
Yeah, we're not trying to say we're better.
no, at the end of the day, it's like there is more to life than video games. And we
Mm,
already, like, if video game development stopped right now, I know for a fact, without meeting anyone listening to this
I'm good.
podcast, there is enough video games out there for you to play for the rest of your life already if you were willing to explore everything
Yes.
that's out there.
Yep.
So if it takes 5 to 10 years, and that's the thing is, even if every single video game on Earth took 10 years to develop, there are still so many developers developing that we'd still get multiple game releases a year anyways.
Yes.
So like, yeah, like,
Yes.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah. Take it back to sixth generation releases, you know, where we have a
Absolutely.
couple of big games
Yeah.
throughout the year spread out massively for, so they don't self cannibalize. And yeah,
And
uh,
I feel like a lot of gamers, including myself, find themselves doing something I kind of hate, which is playing some big, amazing game, but rushing through it to get to the next one.
mm,
And it kind of sucks because it's like, if, for instance, like, I mean, I played it how I wanted to play it, but like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I put, I don't know, 90 hours into it. but I could have put another 40 or 50 if I did all of the content. I didn't really want to, but if that was the only game that released this year, I might have just 100%ed it, right? But like, it's always the next thing. It's like whatever game I'm playing, let's get on it. It's like I'm playing Nier Automata. Oh, the Elden Ring DLC is coming out. Like, let's get on to the next game. And if there was less, there might be less of that. You know, people might be able to get more out of the package. But moving on to the final point and the one that's least relevant, he says another reason why development takes so long is sometimes it's because they can. Developers like Rockstar simply prefer to release titles once a generation to maximize their cultural effect. This is really only a thing with really successful developers who can choose to take long time periods between releases to dominate the gaming conversation once the releases do happen. You know, I think it's funny that he references Rockstar because I don't know if there really is anyone that can do this properly other than Rockstar. Obviously, Rockstar is going to have huge financial gains when their games releases, and you could point to something like Bethesda taking 10 years for an Elder Scrolls or a Starfield or whatever. But like, I feel like with Bethesda, they wanted to be sold. That's why they're owned by Microsoft. I think that it wasn't really working that well for them. Like, even though Skyrim sells a ton, like Fallout sells a ton, like Starfield might not sell as much, or maybe Fallout won't sell as much as they hoped. And it's like, if we take 10 years to develop these games, like, yeah, sure, maybe it's still profitable, but like, is this really realistic that we go on forever having these games take 10 years and hoping that it generates enough money to sustain us the next 10? And I think that's another reason why they're acquired by Microsoft. And even look at like, this is, let me read his name here again. This is Mark Darrah, who used to be at Bioware. So there's a new Dragon Age coming out. It's been 10 years since the last Dragon Age. Like, I don't know that 10 years is really because they can bank on the Veilguard selling 100 million copies. I think it's because it just took 10 years. So it's really just Rockstar is the only example I can think of. But what's your thoughts on this and this point specifically, and just this whole article overall, or this whole video this comes from Mark Darrah on Games YouTube channel. Any new thoughts there, or is it any eye-opening at all? Or
I think it's honestly iterative as well when you come to Bethesda. Like, because they release Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and now Starfield, like like scattered and interwoven. They have more like play with kind of where they, well, to be honest, potentially less play. But then again, if you're looking at their sales and their cultural impact, maybe releasing them more sporadically. The thing with like Skyrim and stuff and like Elder Scrolls is, I wonder, like, in an alternate reality, in an alternate world, an alternate timeline, if they release like one of their titles every generation, kind of like how Rockstar does, would they, like, obviously the games would be better for one because they take longer on each. So say like Skyrim comes out 2011, like they didn't release Fallout 4 until 2022, you know what I'm saying, or 2021 or whatever. It's like, that's like a whole other generation, like, difference. Like, that's a whole 2-generation difference in many ways. Like, start of the 9th generation as opposed to the nearing the end of the 7th generation. I wonder, like, how much that would do for sales, how much that would do for their impact, how much that would do for like the fan.
But it's got to support 10 years of a studio operating.
Well, that's the thing. But like, you got to appreciate, like, Rockstar are where they are because they release banger titles, and they fit in a pocket that is massively like casual. Like, anyone can pick up a GTA game and go bash someone over the head with a golf club. Like, you know what I mean? But like with Skyrim and stuff, it's RPG, so it's not as accessible necessarily as like a GTA or a Red Dead. But you look at Red Dead Redemption 2, it's like in many ways, like, obviously the marketing is the reason why Red Dead 2 sold the way it was, because it was so ubiquitous for so long coming out. But it was the biggest entertainment launch in history up until that point. And GTA 6 will no doubt do it again. I put 100 on that motherfucker. But it's one of those things where it's like, if like Bethesda took their time to refine that engine alongside, bringing out a game every 2 generations or whatever, I wonder. I'm not saying necessarily it would be objectively a good thing, and I wouldn't put money on it. But I'm also wondering if those games were such bangers by that point, every release was a certified hit, just like Rockstar does. That, like,
a huge risk.
It's a huge risk, but it's one of those things where it's like, what would the sales be like? Like Elder Scrolls came out like bang, and then like, okay, we're not doing shit until like Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 4, like I
I feel
said.
like that
Fallout 4
wouldn't
comes
work
out.
out because I feel like Rockstar's an anomaly. Like nobody sells
Yeah,
like the only thing that sells like Rockstar is like
yeah.
Minecraft, and that's a whole different bag. That's not even the
But
same
I'm just
thing.
looking at it from the perspective of like Elder Scroll, Bethesda becoming that anomaly right alongside them. They are the RPG
Mm. Well, let me give
GTA.
you another idea. This is kind of what I was thinking, and I'm not saying I would necessarily want this, but like, what if Bethesda only made Elder Scrolls, and then they could have a title out every 5 to 6 years, and it was just like we just got done a year or two ago playing the sequel to the sequel of Skyrim. Like we're two past.
Mm,
Like, is it really? I don't know. I mean, I could be completely way off, but like, how beneficial is it to them, other than their creative juices flowing, to have three IPs that they cycle from? Because all
mm,
that does is make people go 10 years to Elder Scrolls, 10 years to
yeah.
Fallout, an eternity till the next Starfield. Like, would they have been better off if they were just the Elder Scrolls
I,
studio? I mean, and
I,
not to mention
yeah,
Elder Scrolls still is better than Fallout and Starfield. So,
dude. I wonder like how I wonder that as well. But what I also wonder is like you look at like Resident Evil, you look at Final Fantasy VII remake. It's like how long have them developers been working on that remake trilogy now? Like seems like a long fucking time, right? Like
yeah, I would say about 10 years,
yeah,
and
like
they're not done.
properly,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
properly like 10 years, and it's like they're not done, and you got to wonder like with the sales and the return on investment, and especially now that you bring in the fact that like Bethesda are obviously doing the Game Pass way, and they're always touting on about players rather than sales. It's like, dude, like, is it worthwhile? Is it worthwhile? Or are the creative juices, getting a little bit bored? In whether it's Final Fantasy, I doubt they are.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy, the return on investment, and also Starfield slash Skyrim slash Fallout. Like, if that was such a long period of development for 10 years, just on one series, if they just pick one, if they just picked Elder Scrolls or they just pick Fallout, it's like, is it too long in the tooth now?
Yeah.
Like,
And you can't blame studios or publishers at all when they want to go for these live service or forever games,
yeah,
because maybe I'm missing something, but I'm pretty positive that the entire profit of Helldivers 2 will be higher than the entire profit of the Final Fantasy remake trilogy. I could
I
be
don't. Yeah,
wrong,
I
but
think. Yeah,
I mean, if let's just say let's be optimistic, because even though it's trending less sales, let's be optimistic and say each Final Fantasy sells 7 million copies.
mm,
Helldivers 2 has already sold 12, and it cost a minuscule amount to develop by comparison to Final Fantasy 7
yeah,
remake.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm like, I feel like the profits will be. I mean, like, if Helldivers 2 is moderately successful for years to come, it's already sold over 12 million copies. It's got microtransactions. It's going to continue to sell and continue to have microtransactions. Final Fantasy 7 remake trilogy, it's just got an extremely high development cost, and then it sells 7 million copies and it's done.
yeah,
I feel like it's like you can't hardly blame someone like Sony wanting to be like, here's 10 live service games, hope one's successful, because it's like way lower risk and a huge potential payoff. So
yeah, yeah, 100%.
yeah, I thought this was really cool. I was really glad that this came out before we started recording.
Indeed.
Once again, guys, if you want to watch this video and hear it from his mouth, go to Mark Darrah on Games on YouTube. It's about a 24-minute video.
Oh
So
yeah.
very cool. Over to our next article. Not a lot to say here, but this is something I'm really excited about. I hope it comes true. I've heard it from several different people online, different rumors. I
Yep.
think it is going to happen. Rumor Jeff Grubb says he heard that PS3 emulation is in the works at Sony. He says, it's something that I've heard that has been in the works for quite some time. I thought it was going to get revealed earlier this year when I first heard about it. That clearly didn't happen, but it doesn't mean it will never happen. Maybe it does. So it's
Mm,
something that's been murmuring for a while. I think if you look at the PS1 classics and now the PS2 classics that are coming out on PS5, where it's got like the rewind functionality, like they've been bringing them out as like modern day releases that can come out on like the different PS Plus services, and also you can buy them a la carte. I think PS3 emulation is definitely coming.
yeah.
My guess for how they're going to do this is that it's going to be on a case by case basis with very important games, and that's it. I
Mm,
think the possibility of getting a full catalog in the way that Xbox did it just isn't there. because this is the cell architecture. I could be wrong,
Hmm.
but what I'm thinking is that Sony's going to say, okay, here's the titles from the PS3 we want to bring over. Maybe it's Metal Gear Solid 4. It's what's some other titles? Heavenly Sword, maybe, or something like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale, stuff that has never been ported or remastered. That they're going to go and specifically grab that game and emulate it specifically over to the console. I think we will be getting this, but I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day we have like 50 or less total PS3 games. They're not. This isn't going to be like a boom, here's a 200, 300, 400 game catalog that just drops at once. This is going to be a way for them to bring stuff over to their subscription services piecemeal,
Hmm.
uh, one off, two off games. We got Daxter for the PSP recently. We got
Hmm.
Sly Cooper from the PS2. I think they're going to do the same thing with PS3. Are you
Which was
excited
the
about this,
biggest,
Joe?
which was their
And yeah,
biggest as well. Like the Sly Cooper release was their
yeah,
biggest PlayStation Premium PS2
yeah. I'm going to
thing on the
buy it.
service.
I haven't got to it yet, but I'm going to buy it and play it
Yeah,
for sure.
great game.
But what do you? Are you excited about this? And do you think it'll go kind of the way I'm saying, or do you think it'll be more comprehensive than that?
So the craziest thing is this has been in the works for years now. I went back and researched this recently when I heard about this story because I knew I heard it from somewhere in the past, and it was on Sacred Symbols Plus.
Mm,
And Tom from Moore's Law is Dead, which is someone you can find on YouTube. Um, they've said that they're working on the PS3 emulation, and at the time it was on a PS4, and they were reportedly running 12 games well, but there were problems persisting, which basically boils down to like very early active development, and essentially what happens is this is no further than than like the PS3 emulations that like fans have been doing on PlayStation 3 on my PC, sorry, for the PlayStation 3.
yeah,
And yeah, I was like, so when this rumor came out that Jeff Grubb was saying it, it was like, well, yeah, hopefully we've had some more like rumor mills going around about this and like insiders saying stuff. But the thing with it is like, it's one of those weird things where for me, this it's a really strange thing because like I have a PS3, so like I have it connected up at all times because it's such a proprietary piece of kit that I can't I can't get anywhere else. Like I can't get the games like on there
yeah,
anywhere else. That's like the first party stuff that's developed specifically for the cell architecture. I can't get it anywhere else. So I basically just have my PS3 like rigged up next to my PS5 at all times, mainly to play Metal Gear when I want to go back through the Legacy collection.
yeah.
So this to me is like, yeah, it's cool, but I'm kind of waiting to see like how they monetize it, what like package they bring it to. No doubt they'll bring it to the premium service because that's how they're going to get you. Um, but I don't, like you said, I don't think it's going to be like a massive catalog of
Hmm.
games. I think it's going to be very tight. Potentially, you're going to have like, I mean, I hope Metal Gear Solid 4 comes to it because it's one of the biggest ones on the platform at the time. But yeah, Warhawk potentially stuff like that. But I mean, this doesn't shock me, like I said, because I've heard it before and I remembered. So it's not like a mind blowing thing to me where I was like, "Oh my god, this is
Yeah,
happening! Wow! Oh my god, I've been waiting for this for ages." Because I've been like everyone who's been keeping up with this, with Moore's Law is Dead and stuff like that, we've known that like there Sony knows and we know that Sony knows and Sony knows that we know that they're on borrowed time. They cannot keep these PS3 like farms going for so long. Things are going to break down eventually. They don't obviously make PS3s anymore, so they've got thousands if not millions of PlayStation 3s all hooked up so you can stream these games. And ultimately like they're on borrowed time. And they need to work through this and get it so it's actually like native or at least it emulates through various PlayStation platforms. And yeah, hopefully it works. Hopefully it comes out solid because the thing is, if this doesn't come out solid, in many ways, it's going to be like fuck Sony.
what
you
was the
know,
point? What was the point? Yeah,
what was the point? Like
like if
you've
you
been,
can play Metal
yeah,
Gear Solid 4, but
yeah,
the frame rate is always
yeah,
below 20. It's like,
yes, it's going to be like fuck, dude. Like, or even if it's like. I mean, there's even worse things going on with like PlayStation 3's emulation from a fan perspective, like textures wholly missing and saves being corrupted. Obviously, it's game dependent and stuff, and barely any games work. It's nothing compared to the Xbox 360 emulator, which is Xenia, I think it's called on the PC. But yeah, it's cool. Please bring it. Hurry up.
yeah,
we're
I'm excited
waiting.
for it. Yeah.
I'm excited for it. But I'm cautiously like, I don't trust
Yeah.
you in many ways. I think they've put themselves so far into a rabbit hole with the PlayStation 3 cell architecture that it's gonna be so difficult for them to get out
Yeah.
of it. Like,
I'm excited to play some gems I never played. Like I mentioned Heavenly Sword. Like
yeah,
I know that's not a game that people really love or say is great, but like that was a Ninja Theory game before they
yep,
did Hellblade, and I'm like,
yep,
I'd like to try that, you know. And
hmm
I remember playing as the main character. I don't remember her name, the main character from Heavenly Sword in PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale. So
yes.
I would
No, I
also
don't
like to
remember.
play a PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale again because I thought that was a really fun Smash clone. I mean, it
Yes,
didn't do
it was
well, but
good.
I liked it. I liked it a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
There we go.
next one. This next article I pulled up specifically for you because I know you're a huge fan, Joe.
Mm.
This comes from Gamatsu. Original Resident Evil now available via GOG. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis coming soon, featuring quality of life improvements and enhanced compatibility. So, Resident Evil, it's obviously a multi platform title nowadays, but it really has its roots in the PlayStation. And as far as playing these games go nowadays, you either play Resident Evil 1 Remake that was released on the GameCube, ported in HD over to digital storefronts,
Yep.
and then you can play Resident Evil 2 the remake, you can play Resident Evil 3 and 4 the remake, but there's really been no way to play
Yeah.
Resident Evil the original and then the original iterations of Resident Evil 2 and 3. And now they've been brought over in their original format with quality of life improvements and enhanced compatibility, specifically on GOG for PC.
Yes.
Um, on one hand, that's just awesome for preservation because this is a DRM free platform. They're going to be there and available modern day for people to play them. I mean, I am a console gamer and would always prefer to play on console, but like part of me would like to visit these games in their original formats. I could
Yep.
maybe see myself buying them. It's $10 each, or you can buy all three together in one pack for $25. Very fair price for these games. So you now have them being able to played modernly on a PC. And it also gives me a little hope that maybe we could see in the future something like this released on the PS5. I don't know if that's in the cards at all because of this, but you would think maybe. Joe, is this exciting for you? And do you have any desire to buy these new updated versions on PC?
Yeah, this is very exciting. Actually, I watched the Sphere Hunter on YouTube, or Susie Hunter. She's done a video on this, like literally, I think today or
I
yesterday.
saw that. I can't believe
Um,
I technically have talked to her before,
yeah,
very briefly on
over
the
your other
Sacred
podcast.
Icon
Yeah,
Twitter. She messaged me and said she wanted to be on the podcast, and we
mind
never
blowing.
got her on. What
Yeah,
a fail! What an absolute fail!
message her again and get her on this one.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool, right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, what was I saying? Yeah. So I watched her video on it. Really cool video where she did like some interviews with, I think, two of the GOG developers that were responsible, in some way for getting this DRM free on their platform on the PC. And for people that don't know, GOG is literally a sub company of CD Projekt Red, CD Projekt, which is mind blowing. Everyone always talks about CD Projekt Red as this company that is you know amazing for The Witcher 3 and now Cyberpunk 2077 after all the patches, and The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 1, and obviously their forthcoming projects hopefully doing well and stuff, and people love them. But oftentimes people don't realize that they don't have that knowledge in their mind, because it goes kind of in many ways it's swept under the rug unintentionally, that CD Projekt Red did started that up as a Kickstarter, and is basically obviously nowhere near as big as Steam, but
Well,
a very
I was about to say they're in a really weird pocket because everyone wants their games on PC to be on Steam.
yes,
Nobody wants them to be on an Epic store or a Ubisoft store. That's where GOG falls in a really unique position because it's not Steam. So by that nature, people don't want to be there as much. But
yes,
no one's bothered by it because the whole core principle of GOG is DRM free gaming. You buy the game there, you download the files, you don't have to go through any
yeah,
client. You own it completely on your own as a file.
yes,
And so it's like no one's upset with GOG, but
no,
if you're a heavy PC gamer, you probably want it on Steam. So it's like,
yeah.
Epic gets a lot of headlines because people hate them,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Whereas
GOG gets like none. You
God
know,
gets none just because they. I feel like they have settled, and I respect them for this. In all honesty, they have
yeah.
settled for third best in many ways. Obviously, second best before, Epic, the Epic launcher, the Epic Store came about. But yeah, in many ways, they've settled for being the ethical side of PC ownership in many ways, and I massively respect them as a team for that, because PC, as long as I can remember, ever since I started PC gaming, has been DRM heavy, has been always online and stuff. And yeah, it's just great to see. And this is, again, this is proof in the pudding. You rarely get anything from GOG that's like, oh well, they've done another bullshit thing, or they're paying
Oh,
developers off to put games on their platform to bring you over and stuff like that. And it never feels like dodgy. Even Steam, it's like taking massive cuts of developers cuts, basically massive percentages and stuff comparatively to Epic and stuff like that. So yeah, it's awesome to see. And watching the Susie Hunter, the Sphere Hunter video was really cool to see, because from what I could gather and what she says is, this is like, the way they've done it is they've taken the original PC versions of Resident Evil, or the original PC version rather, not plural, and they've taken it and they've translated it over to modern architecture, essentially. And that's the case. You can tell that's the case by looking at the cutscenes, the FMVs, and seeing like how they're really low frame rate and stuttery. But then as soon as you get into the actual game itself, it's like perfect, essentially a perfect re-release and stuff, which is absolutely incredible. I honestly think I'll pick this up. Does it say anywhere where the pricing of this? I haven't checked.
yeah. I don't know if it's in the. I already read on another article that it was $10 for just the first. The other two are not out yet, but
Yeah,
you can buy all three for 25 total.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you
So
can buy. Yeah, for me, it's £9 or £21 for the bundle, and yeah, that's really dope, dude. I mean, I do go on GOG every so often. One of the games I play on there is SWAT 4, which is one of my favorite games of
it's
all
Roller
time.
Coaster Tycoon for me on
Yeah,
Dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
So,
GOG is the game preservation point for PC that
yeah.
isn't just like emulation.
Yeah.
And I love that. Not that Steam doesn't have that, but once the Steam servers go down, how are you going to get those games? How are you going to play those games? Good luck.
Joe,
Um,
remind me after the podcast. You got it in my head now. I got to see if I can message Susie Hunter. I mean, just try with the clout, right? Like guys, on my other podcast, my other podcast, we were talking about Halo,
yeah.
and Susie Hunter DM'd me and said that she would like to be on the Sacred Icon podcast, and it
How did you not take her up on that offer? How did that?
well, we had a lot of guests at the time, I guess. So it was
Okay,
just a
okay.
matter of, I'm just going to leave it at that, but it was a matter of getting her on. But yeah, I mean, so it would be cool to be like, send her a message on the Critical Frames Twitter and be like, hey, this is Bryan from Sacred Icon. Remember Sacred Icon? Remember that? Would you come on my new PlayStation podcast to do a Resident Evil episode with us? That would be dope.
I mean, go for it.
And
That's the
then, and
one.
then,
That's the one permission. That one time I give you to go on Twitter take over from
yes.
Wesley.
And then she'll come on and she'll be like, let's do this full time. And I'll be like, yeah. And then she'd be the third permanent host, and we'll
There
just
we go. Bada bing,
skyrocket into
bada boom.
success, and super easy. So
Delusions of grandeur, big
yeah,
delusions.
we'll get back to you guys on that. Next article. Joe, do you have any attachments or interest in Jet Set Radio?
See, this is the thing that everyone talks about. I mean, I think they talk about it on Last Stand Media's Defining Duke a lot, right? I think
Mm,
Matty talks about it a lot. Cog talks about it a lot. It's always been a game that like I've had an eye open for, but I've never been like, I'll be honest, I've never been like a skatery,
I don't care for it myself.
like
Yeah.
everyone used to always play like Skate 2 and Skate 3 and stuff, and I dabbled in it and I enjoyed it, but it was only to fuck around with friends and stuff. And same with Tony, like when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater remaster came out, like for the PlayStation and stuff, and it was on the PS Plus
I got that day
collections or
one.
whatever.
I got the day one.
Bro, I was I was just like, bro, I played it for like 5 minutes. I was like, I don't get this whole like board thing. Like I have
Oh my
friends that skate
gosh,
and
dude.
everything. The
Tony
people,
Hawk is so fun, dude.
bro, the people I go camping with, Felix, Owen, and Elliot, they used to skate all the time, and I used to be the one that never skated with them. So it was just
Mm,
like I don't care.
yeah.
So I'm the odd one out. But yeah,
Huh. That's crazy. Well, this is there's a rumor. I mean, it's basically confirmed because the images and video leaked, but it's a like early build of like a new Jet Set Radio remake.
yep,
This is a beloved Sega game that people are always asking for them to bring back. Um, I really just want to shout it out because these leaked images and video, it looks pretty solid.
it does.
Even though it's not the kind of game I'm interested in, it looks like this would actually please fans of the franchise. And obviously, this would come to PlayStation 5. It looks really good. I would always be open minded, but I just don't think it's the game for me. But yeah, cell shaded looks like it's kind of ambitious. I know Sega is in the midst of trying to bring back all these classics. The only thing that really worries me is they say that they want to bring these classics back as like AAA games. And when
Mm,
I think of Jet Set Radio, I can kind of see it going a AAA direction, but for the most part, Jet Set Radio, um, Crazy Taxi, Altered
hmm
Beast, it's really hard for me to imagine those games as AAA products. And that's not like me hating. That's just me saying like stay in your lane and be
Yep.
AA and sell for the right price and get the right audience. Because if you're making a Jet Set Radio game that costs upward like $100 million, I
Yep.
just really hard for me to picture you guys making money back on that. So regardless, it looks cool. Yeah, what do you think, Joe? I mean, did you give it a chance?
It actually looks really cool. I mean, I don't really know anything about this series because it's something that I've just not ever partook in, but it looks so stylish. It looks so cool. Who
Hi-Fi
developed
Rush,
Jet Set? I know
Hi-Fi
it's
Rush
Sega,
might have
but
made this more interesting for people because it's kind of got some, Hi-Fi Rush kind of borrowed some vibes from this, but
yeah, it's got the art style kind of to it.
I don't know
Yeah,
who the developer is other than just saying it's Sega, which is
just an
probably
internal
pretty
team. Yeah,
inaccurate, but yeah.
it
So
looks really cool. I like how like it's open world and stuff. I mean, I'm willing to try out. Here's the question though: you picked up Tony Hawk Pro Skater Remastered Collection day one. What is it about that game that makes you interested, but
yeah.
things like this doesn't?
Well, they're very different. Like Tony Hawk is basically like a simulating being a pro skateboarder
Okay.
with dope ass music playing, and you just pulling off different moves and getting points. Right.
Yes.
It's a very like '90s era type feeling. Jet Set Radio is more like I mean, obviously artistic, cell shaded, graffitiing walls, kind of. It's more in line with like a Sunset Overdrive to me than like a Tony
Mm.
Hawk. Like Tony Hawk is, I hesitate to say a sports game, but like that's really what it was back in the day. You went and got
Oh,
your like PlayStation 1 like Madden game and your hockey game, and you got your Tony Hawk game. And like, I mean, they even tried to monopolize that with like, or like build on that with like doing like I don't remember what it was. His name was on the tip of my tongue. It was like a surfing game that was Tony Hawk, but it wasn't Tony. It was like the surfer guy of that.
Tony Wave.
Tony Wave, yeah.
Tony.
But no, it's definitely falls into something different, I think. But yeah, just not really for me. But I also have nostalgia for Tony Hawk. I don't have that for this.
Now I'm googling Tony Hawk surfing, and nothing's coming up aside from
No,
Tony
it
Hawk.
was like
Tony
no, it
Hawk
was
is
like
actually surfing.
no, it was like it was the name of the popular surfer at that time. It was
Yeah,
his
yeah.
version. I don't know what it was.
Kelly Slater.
Kelly Slater. Yeah, I think
There
that
we
was
go.
it.
Yeah,
But those never took off. It was only Tony Hawk. So
yeah. That was developed
But
by
yeah.
Treyarch. Weird.
crazy. But we can move on to our last article, story of the day. This really makes me so happy. Like, guys, we started this podcast with me talking about, hey, I think I might want to pick up Stellar Blade, and it's like, oh, should I do it? And like me going back and forth, and then me saying, hey, I bought it, I'm playing it, I love it.
In many ways, Stellar Blade for you was Helldivers 2 for me.
Yeah, dude. Like, and I'm so impressed by this game. Like, I love Stellar Blade. Like, it almost like makes me feel like I need to check myself, because it's like, if I go around talking about how much I love Stellar Blade too much, people might think it's for the boobs, or for because the whole big narrative around Stellar Blade is that it's this hypersexualized game. And to be fair, I mean, the main character is hypersexualized. Most of her outfits are very sexualized, but some of them she's barely wearing anything.
Yes.
A lot of the camera angles in like quick time events are like go up her skirt. So like, but you can wear stuff that's less risque if you choose to. But like, they definitely, this is a Korean studio. They definitely monetized her sexuality, but that has nothing to do with why I love this game. This game is like a classic, like PS3 era, linear action game where, but it's also got like, a lot of people are saying that the story for Stellar Blade isn't that good. And what I'll agree with is like, the story isn't going to leave you like mouth open, shocked. It's not going to, you're not going to go home and say like, this is a story like I've never played, because it hits on a lot of the familiar beats. So like, but I did actually love the story. I mean, and people say the characters are kind of bland, and they kind of are, but to me, they were serviceable. They served the story. I love the story. The story is inspired by Neon Genesis Evangelion and Nier Automata. I've talked about that ad nauseum. Like, that's never been my intent to be an ongoing thread throughout Critical Frames podcast. But like, I started with this game, and then I jumped into Nier, and I jumped into Neon Genesis Evangelion. They all kind of go together. But I love Stellar Blade. I'm so happy to see the success. That takes us to our story. This comes from GameMecca.com. Shift Up CFO at the IPO press conference. We estimate that cumulative sales of Stellar Blade have exceeded 1 million. Stellar Blade has achieved a user rating on Metacritic of 9.2, which is the highest ever for a PS5 title, and continues to hold that record today, said Jawu An, CFO of Shift Up. Since its launch, the game is ranked first in sales in major console markets such as the US and UK, and cumulative sales are estimated to have surpassed 1 million copies. It's a great first step for our major global IP. Reading on here, since Stellar Blade was released on April 27th this year, it will be reflected in earnings starting from the second quarter of this year. Pre-sales before launch and post-launch sales are progressing smoothly. See, I'm an example of that. I bought it 2 weeks after launch because I was just really interested, and I came right. Them releasing that demo was such an intelligent idea because that demo was what sold me on the game. The game is a PS5 exclusive, which hasn't seen the same level of penetration and activation as PS4, and the main consumer base for AAA games has been shifting more towards PCs. So we are currently looking at a PC version of Stellar Blade, which we believe would be a great way to monetize the IP once again. This has been talked about before. Shift Up owns the IP. They've partnered with PlayStation, but they have the ability to bring it to PC. They could bring it to Xbox or a Switch 2 if they wanted. It says, we are currently reviewing a PC version of Stellar Blade. And since we are in a contractual relationship, please understand that we cannot tell you about the exact timing or availability. My guess is Sony has them for a year before they can release somewhere else.
Yep.
Next, regarding Stellar Blade itself, CEO Kim Hyun-tae then commented, rather than maximizing profits, our goal was to create an IP with high value to ensure branding in the process of gathering users around the world and building a fan base. In this process, for the sake of brand value, we minimize aspects that users might feel uncomfortable with, such as microtransactions, and we plan to reflect this to the extent that users are satisfied with the results. However, this will not be immediate, he clarified. Specifically, he added that collaborations with other companies' IPs could result in paid DLC. So I love this. This company, Shift Up, is already known for very successful mobile games, like gacha games with microtransactions. They wanted to set out by starting a new IP, AAA console game, and they put out Stellar Blade, and they want to curate this fan base, and they're doing it. Like, I am a fan of this IP, guys. Unless something horribly goes wrong, I will be there day one for Stellar Blade 2. I love this game. It would be my favorite game I've played this year if it wasn't for Rebirth, which was like a shoe-in.
Yep.
I recommend it to pretty much anyone. Like, you're not going to get a 10 out of 10 experience, but for me, a very solid 8. Maybe a 9 for some people. For me, it's a solid 8 out of 10 experience. I know there's plenty of people on Twitter. Wes can speak to this, running our Twitter, that are like, Stellar Blade's a 10 out of 10 for them. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter actually say, wow, you know what? I was expecting Rebirth to be my PlayStation game this year, but it was actually Stellar Blade.
What?
Yeah, dude. Like, it's an awesome game. Great combat, phenomenal music, great level design. Really, I mean, it only slips up in being like, if you played Nier Automata and you felt moved by its narrative and its characters,
yes,
you're not going to feel that moved in Stellar Blade. It's just, just doesn't.
It's all gameplay. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't resonate the same way. It's gonna be like a Nier Automata light when it comes to how the characters and the story resonates, but it is a similar story. But the combat and the graphics and the level design is all better than Nier Automata. And I would say the music is on par. And if you've played Nier Automata and you know how dope that music is, Stellar Blade rises to meet it with just as good a music. So I would say, like, because I would actually give Nier Automata, I haven't finished it yet, we'll get to that. I give Nier Automata an 8 as well. So I would say that I would say that, like, for different reasons, this is on par with Nier Automata, which I know that's probably a hot take because Nier Automata seems like one of the best games ever. But like I said, like, Stellar Blade is far exceeding Nier Automata in its graphics, level design, and combat. So I think they both have pros and cons, but very happy for the success. I hope that 1 million copies so far, like 1 million copies in 2 months for this new IP, and it's only on one console. I think that's really good. It seems that they're happy. Yes. I hope that's what they wanted, and I hope that it sees 2 or 3. I doubt that it will see much more than that on one console. Maybe it could get higher with PC and eventual other console launches, like a Switch 2 or something. Yeah. Joe, from your outside perspective on Stellar Blade and what I've said and what this says, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at potentially, like, I don't know, in take home, like $40 to $50 million. Like,
we don't know what the development is. Are you kind of guessing on the development price?
I'm guessing on the development in terms of that, and also, like, obviously Sony take a percentage cut, of course, and stuff like that, But that is mind blowing, and considering that, I mean, this potentially is definitely sub 100 million in terms of budget for
I
creating.
would say this is a $50 million game if I
Yeah,
had to pull something out of my
yeah,
ass,
yeah.
but
Some people have said 20, 30, 40. Like it varies, but until we have that hard
yeah.
data, it's hard to say. But but yeah, I think it's mind blowing. I think it's mind blowing for this studio. I think the fact that they own this IP, just like Kojima technically owns the rights to Death Stranding and stuff. Obviously, like
Mhm.
505 Games published that game on PC, and obviously Sony published it on PlayStation on various PlayStation platforms. But ultimately, like the fact that Sony are allowing this freedom of like creatives and studios to like obviously pitch their games to them. And then say this can be an exclusive for say a timed exclusive or a full blown exclusive, but mostly let's be honest, it's going to be a timed exclusive for a year or so. I think it's mind blowing. I think it's really good. I think it's a really good way of bolstering your platform when you need, like we've said this loads with the transitional period that's going on with Herman Hulse right now, and uh, the other executive that I can never remember his name because it's
His
something
name, yeah.
crazy.
He's more
Um,
hardware side.
Hitoki Takoti or something. I don't know. Anyway,
No, that's the guy above them.
that's the guy above.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's really really cool, and I'm just happy for him, dude. Like I have nothing to say in terms of the game itself because I've not played it like
Yeah.
Bryan, but it definitely looks like a fun ass game. I'm potentially gonna look more into it. In terms of like the gameplay and stuff to see if it's something I like. I like fast hack and slashes. I talked about
I
like Phantom Blade
Well,
Zero and stuff.
the closest gameplay I can compare it to Souls.
Yeah.
But the reason I don't mention that is because it does vary itself enough away that
Yes.
it's clearly not a Souls copy, but
Yeah.
this is parrying, dodging,
Yep.
big, awesome, bombastic boss fights. It's
Yeah. It's not
I
a.
hope I hope you,
Mm,
I don't expect you to play it anytime soon, but I hope that in time with sales, whether it's years from now, I would love for you to play this because I think
yeah.
I think you'll enjoy it. I can't
Yeah.
imagine you wouldn't.
And I think you spoke very briefly on that demo being awesome. Like the fact I think more series need to do demos. More games
Yeah.
need to do demos. Need to be confident in that because I mean I think of Resident Evil again. Like they constantly release demos that are half an hour long and stuff, and it will just be a very tight vertical slice of what they want you to experience and what you're going to experience. And the craziest thing is every time they release these one shot demos or whatever that Capcom do, it always is representative of the game that you're going to get because
Yeah.
it's so close to launch. And what that does is it just like naturally brings people in to be excited for the game that you're creating without and it's literally like I said, it's just a freebie little offshoot. It doesn't take too long. And the thing with it is because it's literally coming out like immediately before, you don't introduce, which is something that people have spoke about a lot, developers have spoke about a lot, why people don't do demos anymore, is it doesn't because it's so close to the actual release version of the game, it doesn't sort of showcase sort of how would you say, like backdoor tunnels for hackers and
Mm.
problem people like that to kind of exploit the demo and stuff like that for when the standalone comes out. So yeah, I think this is dope, and yeah, hopefully they
Yeah.
keep going.
I think if you know your game's good, I feel like a demo only helps. I
Yes.
remember it was pretty big. Final Fantasy 16 got a demo before it came out, and the demo for 16 was really, really good. And they said that the demo helped the sales of that game.
Hmm.
And I mean, to the point where I don't feel this way, obviously, but like to the point where people still say to this day, like the best part of Final Fantasy 16 was the demo. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the opening part of the game. So I think if you know your game's good, release a
Hmm.
demo. If you're not
Hmm.
sure, maybe it's not a good idea. You know what I mean? But like if you know it's good, I just don't see the negative with
Yeah.
releasing a demo. So
100%. Yeah.
all right, that's it for our stories, Joe. So let's head over to what we're playing.
Hmm.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. I'll go first. Or did I go first last time?
I don't remember. I can go first if you want.
You'll go first this time. I went first last time.
Okay. So let's see. How do I want to go about this? So here's the interesting thing, guys. I talked about how I felt about Nier Automata last week on
Hmm.
the podcast. I've really loved the game, really enjoyed it. I said last time it was like, I beat the game the first playthrough. So for those who don't know, and I'm not going to be spoiler heavy at all,
Hmm.
the Nier Automata is designed for you to play the game and complete it 3 times to get the full narrative. If you don't, it's not like a new game plus. It's literally beat the game
Yeah.
3 times,
Keep
and
going.
that tells you the one full complete story. And so I beat the game the first time and I loved it. And I was like, this game's awesome. 8 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I go to the second playthrough, and the second playthrough is mostly the exact same experience as the first with some new cutscenes. And I was getting really fatigued on playing the game because what it really just felt like is I was just playing the game all over again, right back to back,
Mm-hmm.
getting really fatigued. And I got to the third playthrough, which is where things get pretty different. And just 10 minutes into the third playthrough, I was like, I just cannot do another 6 to 7 hours in this game. Because and like I said earlier in this podcast, like the game is like heavy on asset reuse, heavy on going to the same areas, using the same open world, which is pretty small. The level designs I find lacking sometimes. There's a lot of invisible walls, stuff like that. So after the podcast, I tried to play it some more, and I just got even more frustrated. And I said, you know what? Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC is coming out. I've put over 30 hours in this game. I've beat it twice. I know I didn't beat the third playthrough, which is technically like finishing the narrative, but I was like, I'm done. And I literally wrote a review online, gave it an 8 out of 10, said I really enjoyed it, but it asked too much of the player to go on for too long.
Yes.
And then I deleted it from my PlayStation 5. I deleted the game, downloaded Shadow of the Erdtree, jumped into Erdtree, and I was having a blast in Erdtree. I fought the first night boss, killed him. I fought the lion boss, killed him. Having a good time, like not getting stuck or anything, not getting frustrated with Elden Ring. But this little voice in my head kept beckoning to me, beckoning back and back and back. Nier Automata deserves.
Come back, Bryan.
It deserves your completion, and I'm just like,
giving you
why?
the wassa.
And I'm like, I don't know why this is happening, because I was just like frustrated with it. I mean, I deleted it. I thought I was done, but I'm like, I gotta finish it. Like, there's something special about this game. So I went and re-downloaded the thing I just deleted 2 days ago. And I jumped back in, and I got past, the first hour of the third playthrough and got to play as a different character, and I'm going through it. And it's been, I think, 3 days now since I re-downloaded it, and I have been playing it and having a blast and been at work, and I have not been thinking about Erdtree. I've been thinking about Automata.
There it is.
I don't know what it is, guys. Like, I still very much stand by my 8 out of 10 review. It could change once I beat the third playthrough. I think I'm probably going to stick there, though, because I feel like what has happened with Nier Automata, this is my assessment. Looking at the reviews, like I looked at Metacritic and I've looked at the scores. Like, me giving this game an 8 out of 10 is not a hot take. It is in the mid 80s on Metacritic, and many people, like big publications, gave it an 8. Some gave it a 7. Some gave it a 6. Some gave it a 10. And I think what happened with Nier Automata is just, it's such a special game. It's so unique. Like, it's unique in so many different ways. The fact that you got to replay it over and over again, the fact that it switches genres from like space Galaga shooter to hack and slash to side scroller to mini games. Like, it's got such an original like style to it. It's so special, and I think the expectations coming in, especially if you played the Nier that came before, the expectations were so low probably, and what they were able to do on the budget, I could see how you play this game and it would resonate with you deeply, and you'd be like, oh, 10 out of 10, one of the best games of all time. But, and of course, my opinion doesn't mean more than anyone else's, but for me, like really assessing this game, I'm like, okay, it's got some 10 out of 10 elements to it, but like, this is a game that had a little bit more of a budget. It's reusing a lot of assets. It's got a very small open world, to the point where I would wager there's games that don't call themselves open world that have hub worlds that are as big as this, is what I would wager. And you're constantly running invisible walls and like redoing the same kind of, going to the same areas, fighting the same enemies. I was like, it's got problems, but man, for what it uses, what it does with its budget, with the amount of reuse, the killer soundtrack, the awesome combat, the really cool, unique narrative and the characters, it's a very special game. And I can see how like somebody would arrive at like a 10 out of 10 best game of all time experience. I haven't quite beat the third playthrough yet. I'm in the last 20%.
Nice.
But I have come back. I'm really enjoying it, and it is a special game to me. Like I said on last episode, I'm like, it's not going to be top 50, but it's going to be in top 75. That's still where I'm at. I don't think it's going to break that top 50, but it's definitely in that top 25, probably top like 60 even. Like it's really good, and it's very special. Like, it's going to be a very memorable experience to me.
Yes.
It's hard for me to look at, like, because for those of you that don't know, and I've talked about this before, like, people compare Nier Automata and Stellar Blade because, like, the people who did Stellar Blade, they or the director, he just said, "Yeah, I ripped off Nier, like, I was going off Nier Automata."
Yeah.
Well, you play both these games, and it's hard for me to say which one I like more because for
Right.
me, Stellar Blade, it did not overstay its welcome, and it had amazing combat and graphics,
Yes.
and it was just a blast, and it just didn't overstay its welcome. But then you get to Nier Automata, and it's like so much more thought provoking and
Mm.
deeper, and the characters make you feel more. But I'm also like, holy shit, you've overstayed your welcome, and like this
Yes.
game looks like it could have been a late. I'm sure it couldn't have, but it almost at times looks like it could have. There could have been a 360 release for Nier Automata.
Mm.
Actually, that's pretty fair, probably too, because like Nier Automata got ported to Switch, which I know Switch is more powerful than a 360,
Yeah.
but like, I don't think it's that much of a stretch. So like,
It's a budgetary thing, though, right? Like, I
yeah,
mean, the game is not sort of firing on all cylinders
no.
comparatively to a Sony first party game or something
But
like that, you know. So
Stellar Blade feels like it's firing in all cylinders where it wants to.
yes.
Where Nier Automata feels like it is pushing as hard as it can to fire everywhere, and it's just not really. It doesn't have the budget to do that, but it comes together in such a way you're so freaking impressed, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But and there's just like just like character of 2B, like it's like she's like a gaming icon.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, as much as I love Eve of Stellar Blade, like, I just don't think she's going to become what she's going to become is a sex symbol for people, but not a gaming icon.
No.
Unfortunately.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm
That's
loving
awesome.
Nier
Yeah.
Automata, and as far as Shadow of the Erdtree goes, in the very minimal amount of time I put into it, 3 or 4 hours, beat 2 bosses, ran around the very huge open world. Game's gorgeous, game's awesome. It's more of that Elden Ring goodness, but I also think it's reinforcing how Joe and I feel about how like Elden Ring is so freaking good. It's a banger. It's deserving of all the praise, but it just isn't that nougaty goodness, pure perfection that like Bloodborne, Sekiro, Dark Souls felt like. It's
Yep.
by going open world, it and having it have all these different elements. It's just not. It doesn't hit the same way for us, but cannot be disappointed at all with Elden Ring. It just
How
reinforces what it is. So
how
yeah.
far so what bosses have you defeated in Elden Ring?
I beat the goal knight
The
that
Black
everyone
Gold
struggled.
Knight, yeah,
Black
whatever
goal
his
knight,
name
and
is.
then I beat the dancing lion,
The
and that's
Dancing
it.
Lion. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
is so the Black Gold Knight, he's an optional boss, isn't he?
He's
Like
optional. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Actually,
I'm
it
a
was
bit
harder
further
for
than
me
you.
than the dancing lion, but I couldn't use summons for the
Y-
knight, and I
Yeah,
could for the lion. So
he's difficult. You kind of have to exploit his gap because like this
yeah,
enemy, he'll constantly charge you. He presses the offensive all the time, and he does so
yes,
much damage at the start of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC because he's literally like as soon as you start, if people who haven't done him or played him, like play the game, he's literally like as soon as you start, you take a left down like and you follow the mountain range like underneath it, and you hit like a sort of tomb. You
yep,
go down and it's instantly there. I'm talking like literally like a minute of walking.
yep.
So obviously people are like, oh yeah, well this guy's gonna be like fucking easy. Is at the start? No, dude. Like he's fucking challenging
No,
as balls. I mean, it took me
you
like
have
45 minutes, 50 minutes to beat him. Like,
it took you 45 ish. Took me about an hour 15, but you
yeah,
have to learn the pace of his movements.
yes,
Like it's not just hey, make sure you dodge a lot.
yeah,
It's hey, make sure you know when you should dodge because if he does this attack and you dodge, his follow-up attack is going to have a higher range and he's still going to hit you. So don't dodge here or like sometimes it's good to like get close to him so that he won't do a certain move. He also
mhm,
has like a crossbow which if the crossbow hits you, it's massive damage. But
yes.
what's nice about it is it's very easy to avoid. So it's kind of nice to get him to use the crossbow because since it's so easy to avoid, you can go in and get some
That's
damage on him.
exactly what I did. I would abuse his mid range so
Yes.
that like he could fire he has like a rapid fire Van Helsing crossbow that fires
Yeah.
fire bolts at you, and you just run to the left of him or the right of him as he's firing, and you kind of do like a diagonal sort of aggression run where you
Yep.
kind of like come into him, and as he's finishing his move, you can just like get 3 hits on him, and like if you're a bleed build character, like that gives you enough just to get that proc going.
Yep.
But yeah, he's a ball ache of a character, and the reason why he's so hard is honestly because his stance is so high. Like if you don't use heavy attacks on him, which is hard to get in because he's so aggressive, like I've
Yep.
said, he is like fucking so difficult because he never staggers. So
One of my strengths was just like learning his like when to dodge, and then when I went in for an attack, I did a jump attack,
Okay.
and the jump attacks did more damage. And the thing is, the jump attack, I felt like it usually left me less open to a quick recoil from him.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, but it felt
Okay.
like rather than trying to go in and hit him with a heavy attack, I was just like,
Yeah.
run, jump, attack, back up, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but
He's a cool boss, but yeah, Nier Automata for you is, or Automata is how you say it. Is that's awesome, dude. I really can't say much about it because I can't remember fucking anything about it aside from the
yeah,
ending.
it's a special game, and it's so
Yeah.
cool. It's like, once again, no spoilers, but like, Stellar Blade was like mimicking Nier Automata. Nier Automata was the director of Nier Automata said, "Yeah, I basically just ripped off Neon Genesis Evangelion."
Yes.
And I was playing the section in the third playthrough of Nier Automata last night, where once again, no spoilers on the context, but like it literally zooms the camera in to like a kaiju camera angle, and it just puts you in a kaiju battle where it's just like two giant kaijus fighting each other, and I'm like, this is just Neon Genesis Evangelion. This is like literally scenes of this happening in the show. And it was just it put a stupid grin on my face. And that was in the third playthrough. Nothing like that was in the first two. So I'm like, well, shit, I would never saw that,
Yeah.
Also, there's this really cool story moment. Once again, no spoilers, of like, just because one of the things about like basically these games and also Neon Genesis, like what it means to be human and the value of life. And there was a character that like that's explored in the third playthrough, and I'm like, oh my god, it's just so good. This is so good, and it's really made me. And we're already planning on like our next sacred icon. That's been my podcast for 5 years. Our next Critical Frames Plus episode. We've talked about doing Last of Us, but like what I want to do after that is I've had this idea in my head now. And the thing is like we usually do like an hour for those, but like I feel like I'd go for hours. But I want to do an episode that's just titled like, what does it mean to be human? And I want to talk about Blade Runner and Neon Genesis Evangelion and Nier Automata and Stellar Blade, because I think the concept is so fascinating, and that question never gets old to me.
Yeah.
But it's been a blast.
It'll be a debate or a discussion that lasts until humanity's demise.
Yeah. It's because it's crazy, because this
you'll
the
never
thing
figure
is,
it out.
Yeah, you watch the show or you play these games, you watch Blade Runner, and it's like, because like, okay, just to get out of that pocket that I've been talking about for so long on the show, like let's talk about Blade Runner. Blade Runner 1, spoilers for Blade Runner 1, and I will make sure I talk for less than 40.
You've had 30 years. Whatever.
Yeah, come on. Like, no, actually, yeah, just I'm going to spoil some Blade Runner 1, and not a ton of it, but like, just come on, guys. The interesting thing about Blade Runner is it's like there's these replicants, which are basically what you guys would know as androids, like organic life that's been created by humans. They're not humans, but they walk, talk, and think and act like humans, but they're not.
Yes.
And in the original Blade Runner, the main character Deckard, who's played by Harrison Ford, is falling in love with this replicant, this android. He loves her. She walks and talks and acts like a human. He's able to be intimate with her, but she's a replicant, and she's supposed to be killed or taken out, and he doesn't want to do that. And so through him and his interactions with her, and seeing her feelings and her life and how she feels real emotion and acts like a normal human, you start to feel like, well, why should we be able to kill her or take her out or decommission her when she has what is effectively the real life of a human with memories and cares and all this stuff. And what's so interesting is the movie does an amazing job of making you ask the question of what does it mean to be human, and what is the value of human life, because she seems so human. But then to really drive the point forward in the very last minutes, or like seconds of the show or of the movie, it basically makes you question, is Deckard, Harrison Ford's character, wait a minute, is he even human? Maybe he's a replicant.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends and doesn't answer the question, and it's never been officially answered.
No.
So if you already didn't get some sympathy for the girl, and it's not even just the girl that he falls in love with, there's also other replicants that you feel for in the movie.
100%.
But if you already didn't, if you managed to get to the end of that movie and not already feel sympathy for those characters, you should at least, you just had the rug pulled out from under you that the main character you're following, Deckard, he might not even be a human.
Yeah.
So if you were convinced that he was worth something the whole movie just said to you, ha ha.
Yeah.
gotcha,
Yeah.
because he might be a replicant. And what's
Yeah,
so
it's
genius is it too is that like the sequel to this movie, Blade Runner 2049, the question it all opens up with is the chick that Deckard loves in Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner, she gets pregnant with
Yeah.
his child in Blade Runner 2049. And what's so genius is then the question becomes, well, can a replicant have a child? And they never answer the question of whether or not Deckard was a replicant or a real human. So it works either way, right? Like the question can be, how did she give birth when she's a replicant?
Yep.
But it could also be like, did two replicants make this baby? I just love that shit, dude. So great. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna like reinforce, like, you go the entire film of the first one questioning, obviously, like, you're from Deckard's perspective, you're living this story vicariously through Deckard as a vehicle for the narrative. But then as soon as the ending happens and you're like, wait, is Deckard a real fucking person or not? That instantly reflects back on you, so that makes the whole thing way more impactful,
Yeah,
just
dude.
because it directly addresses you as a person, no longer just Deckard.
It's so genius, dude, because here's the thing, and I'm just gonna elaborate further because it's just giving me chills. It's so good, dude. Like, so what's her name? Is it it starts with a
Cannot
what is the chick's
remember.
name? It starts with an R, doesn't it? Deckard's the girl.
Rachel?
Oh, Rachel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that it explores in the movie is that Rachel has memories of being a child.
Yeah.
But she's told later in the film, that's because we gave you the memories of your creator's daughter. We implanted you with memories to make you feel more like a human.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like her whole world's shattering because she's like, I thought for sure I knew that I was human because I have memories, but it's like, no, we put those in you too. So what's so genius is throughout the movie, Deckard, the character we know to be human, he has dreams of a unicorn. But he's never seen a unicorn in his life. He has no memories of a unicorn.
Yeah.
But he seemingly has a memory of one in his memories. Well, then at the very end of the movie, this character who's been making like paper origami animals all around the movie, he leaves a paper origami of a unicorn at Deckard's front door. But Deckard has never told anyone that he sees unicorns. And how could this guy know that Deckard knows what a unicorn is unless he had been part of him putting memories in Deckard as a replicant? But at the same time, it never confirms that's the case. So it just makes you wonder. It's so freaking good, dude. Holy shit, it's good.
We're gonna have to do a video. We're gonna have to do an episode on this.
Yeah, I would love to, dude. Like, and that's the thing is like, that Blade Runner was like what, 82, I think? Yeah, 82. And then
so, yeah.
Blade Runner inspired like movies like anime movies like Akira, and then inspired like the Neon Genesis Evangelion was inspired somewhat from Blade Runner, and then you get Nier Automata. All that stuff comes from that. Like it all comes from that. What does it mean to be human? And of course, Blade Runner is loosely based on a book called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
Yep.
So that shit's just so fire to me, dude. I love that stuff.
I gotta go rewatch them again.
Yeah, dude. Definitely. I'll do it too. We'll talk about it. But all right, Joe, over to you. It's finally time for your special topic. I've done them like the last 3 weeks in a row.
I didn't talk about my games.
Wait, holy shit, I just skipped. We talked so much about me. I was just skipping right over you. Okay, what have you been playing, Joe? Man, screw me. My bad.
Yeah, how dare you?
No, I can't believe
that.
that.
So patient, and then you just skip over
I think it's because, know what it is, dude? I actually thought we talked about yours because we talked about Elden Ring, but we didn't. We didn't talk about what you were playing. But
my experience with Elden Ring is quite different to yours in many ways, and I'm going to go back to the start. So obviously, I played a little bit more Stalker since the last time I did Sacred Symbols, Critical Frames. We're saying all the wrong titles of the podcast this episode. I don't know what's going on. Must be the heat. And well, at least for me, not for you. Play more Stalker, great game. Did the arena in it, which is like just this little PvP mode. That's great. But I don't really want to talk about Stalker.
Joe, I love you. Remind me of, because I grew up with Fable. Fable's one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
And it's a British game.
Yes, it is.
And the only time I've ever heard, the only time I've ever heard anyone say arena instead of arena.
Arena.
Yeah, when you say it sounds like arena. And that's the thing. You fight in an arena in Fable, and it's like the characters in that game are like, first we have fighting in the arena, it's the guy with the chicken hat. And then
bloody
it's like,
hell.
you just brought me back to Fable. But anyways, go back to what you're saying.
Oh, that's fine. I'll be your chicken chaser, Bryan. It's okay.
God, chicken chaser then.
Oh, you're a chicken chaser. Bloody hell, mate. So played Stalker, did the arena in it. For anyone that knows what that is, if you don't worry about it. It's not important. Don't really want to talk about Stalker though, because it's basically, I'm just gonna say what I've already said about the game. It's brilliant. It's awesome. I love it. It's a very niche game for what it is. Pick it up on PlayStation 5. Support GSC Game World. Those funds will go to Stalker 2. So do it. But aside from that, I want to talk about Elden Ring, because Elden Ring was a very interesting turn of events for me in many ways, and Bryan knows what I'm about to say with getting into the DLC. Basically, I platinumed this game when it came out. Did everything, did all the endings, save scummed the fuck out of it. I only did one playthrough, and like I said, I save scummed it so I didn't have to do multiple playthroughs just to do the ending over and over again to get the platinum, because fuck that. And I put about 90 to 100 hours into the game, I would say, something like that, which is pretty quick for Elden Ring, I would say, considering it was a platinum run. And I went over to New Game Plus, and I completely, right, as of recent, when we was talking about the DLC, when we was talking about all these different things with Shadow of the Erdtree and everything, I've completely forgot, just like I forget a lot of things in life, that I went onto New Game Plus, and the way the DLC works is just like Bloodborne and stuff, is you have to go to a specific area in the world, in the save, once you get past a certain place. And that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's the way FromSoft has always done it in many ways. And I'm just like, cool, that's no problem. I was under the impression, like a Muppet, right, that I could pick this DLC from the main menu. No idea why, okay? I was under the impression that this was going to be the case. And here's the thing, like, I completely forgot that, like, it's weird because it's like two sides of it, right? Like, I was under the impression that this was going to be like, you can pick it from the main menu, even though I thought that I was further in the game in my save of beating Margaret and Radahn in this New Game Plus. I wasn't. And I literally jumped into my New Game Plus, and I was like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. Like, I was just like, where,
Where am I? Where is he?
what's going on? Where is everyone? And I was literally at Limgrave at the first site of grace, just like, what's going on? Like, where's like my graces? Like, why aren't I at the end? Like, why aren't I at the Erdtree, etc., etc.? And I was just like, fuck. Okay, so I literally loaded into the main menu. I tried to load back to my original save. No can do. I saved over it like an absolute muppet. Okay. Like a fucking moron, because how did I know that there was going to be a DLC at the end of the day, right? And I'm like, fuck. And I'm going in the admin channel, I'm typing in the admin channel in Critical Frames Discord, and I'm like, fucking FromSoft, why the fuck did they do this? Da-da-da. And I'm fucking ranting, I'm raging, da-da-da-da, and I'm going for it. And Bryan's like, well, you know what, Joe? Like, they gave you enough fucking information to know this. Like,
I feel like every day for at least a week, and then
dude.
periodically before that, they were like, make sure you have Mog beaten
Yes.
recently. You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so.
But like, I was just a muppet where I thought, one, for whatever reason, I was further in the New Game Plus thing, and even if I wasn't, or even if I was, I would still be able to do it from the main menu. Obviously, that's not the case. You have to access the DLC from a place in the world, just like every other fucking FromSoft game, right? And I'm like, right, okay, shit. And I said in the chat, I was like, right, I'm just gonna take a breather. I took a breather, and I was like, right, okay, I'm going. Okay,
Play
right.
this whole damn game
I
again.
literally went into like, I don't even, something happened. Something clicked in me. I went into like action man mode, and I was just like, I need to fuck this game up. So I was like, right, I fuck Margaret up. So I was just running to Stormville Castle, like, like just past everyone, running past everyone. Fuck Margaret up in like the first go. I didn't die at all. I didn't even use like 3 flasks. I was like, yeah, fuck you, bitch. So all the bosses I was fighting had like the anger and frustration of not being able to get into this DLC. Like, all of it was just flowing through me.
Yep. What level were you?
I was like a Sith Lord. I was like Darth Vader right now, right? I was letting it breed inside me. Went to Godric. I was like, yeah, come on then, fat bastard, let's have you. So I literally was like, I sliced him up, like murdered his ass. And
What
I was
level
like,
were you,
right,
Joe? What level were you?
170, 160.
Okay, that's what
like
I'm 172. So yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, all right then, cool, done. So carried on, because I had to kill Margit and Godric, to progress Mog's storyline. This is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so then I start doing the Mog storyline more. I like invade people's worlds. I like kill 3 people because I'm just that awesome at Elden Ring, right? Like, I just do I even 2v1'd at one point. I was like, yeah, fuck you guys, with my swords, like blood build, procking, like just going crazy, right? I'm just such a beast. So then I'm like, Okay, I've done that, and I finally get to Mog's Palace, and I'm like, yeah, okay, come on, then. Takes me about 4 or 5 goes to kill Mog. He's a fucking brute. He really is, because like once that second phase pops, he's kind of like that Black Gold Knight in his style, where he doesn't let up. Like he just charges you with his big spear.
Were you using ashes or no?
No summons,
Okay.
nothing. No summons on Mog, no summons on Mog,
I know
no
you're
summons
being
on
nice
Godric.
not to say it, but your eyes tell me like, no, I'm not a bitch.
I'm not a little bitch like you, Bryan.
Because dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. Before the DLC came out, so I have a bleed build also, and I'm 170. I'm 170, so we're probably pretty similar. I bet we have some of the same gear.
Yeah,
when I
do.
went to Mog, I summoned my Mimic.
Yes.
I beat him on the first try.
Yeah, I probably would have as well. I mean, like every time I got him to like a quarter health, and then he would just like pull some crazy shit out. Yeah, and then I was like, you know what? I mean, this was like 2, 1:30 in the morning at this point, because I wanted to get into the game. I wanted to get into the DLC at this point, but I was like, you know what? We're gonna power through it. And then I run to Radon. I'm like, right, fucking Radon. So basically, what you have to do to get to Radon is you have to get to the Altus Plateau, which is that lift, to start the festival. So, and here's the thing, because I'm rushing around so much, I get to the Altus Plateau, and what you actually have to do is walk through the Altus Plateau to get to the first site of grace. So I go up the lift to the Altus Plateau, and I literally, as soon as I get up the lift after the cutscene, I teleport back to Radon's festival, and I'm like, why isn't it triggered? So then it's like, oh no, you haven't walked all the way to the fucking first grace. So I'm like, fuck. So I had to go back to the lift, go up the lift, go to the grace, rest, and I'm like, fuck, dude. So that took like another 10 minutes just to do, like, because you have to wait for the cutscene and shit, and I had to skip it, and I had to walk through and everything. So then I teleport back, I slay Radon. Radon is just a wasteless sack of shit. Like, he is not worth my time. He's not worth my level 180. I'm just like, yeah, fuck you, dude. Easy clap, bada bing, bada boom. So then I'm like, okay, right, cool. It's 3 a.m. at this point. I'm like, bro, I'm tired. I've just been at work. It's Friday night. I'm tired. I'm just gonna go to bed because I don't want to start this Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree playthrough DLC right now. So I'm like, cool. Saturday night rolls around. I'm like, I did it. Okay, I'm here.
How many hours did it take you to beat all those bosses to get to the DLC? 4 or 5, I think I remember.
No, way too long. 2.5, maybe 3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm a beast, dude. I'm telling you, I'm a fucking beast.
He was. He was in the Discord with his balls hanging out and everything. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. We get NSFW down in that place. Yeah, so
come join us.
Come join us. Links in the description. So then I go and I'm like, bada bing, bada boom. I'm in the Shadow Realm or whatever the fucking place they call it nowadays. I don't know what the kids are calling it. I go in and it's great. Okay, I'm fighting all these monsters. I'm killing everything. I'm pleased to announce that this is a 9, 10 out of 10 DLC, no doubt. Like, it's one of the best that's ever been made.
Yeah.
And I did the Black Gold Knight. I did the double-bladed woman with armor on, Renala, I don't know what her name is, but people will know who she is if you've researched the game at all. She's hard as shit. And that was my first night playing. And great time. Loved it. But I gotta say, Bryan, just as you said earlier, the more I play Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, because of the way the leveling works, similar to the way like Sekiro works, where it's like a boss gauntlet more so, and you have to find certain pieces around the world and stuff like that, rather than leveling with the runes. Why am I doing all this exploring? And why are all these mobs around? Because the only thing I should really be leveling at this point, or what I'd normally level is obviously Dex, Strength, whatever, depending on the build you do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, at this point, I'm not leveling anything. I'm just leveling my endurance, my vitality. Like, I find a lot of the collecting and the kleptomania that's going on with all the items and the dead bodies and the people around the world kind of just fluff for the sake of just like, oh, well, this is as big as Elden Ring standalone. This is as big as the base game, or just as big as Limgrave or whatever. And it's like, I feel like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on with this DLC, where the quality is still 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, no doubt in my mind. I'm not saying it's not a good game. It's not a good DLC, because it's definitely one of the GOATs. But I just have massive issue with how it's inflating the size of this game for what it really is, which, in my opinion, Elden Ring's DLC is a glorified boss gauntlet, very much so. And I feel like the way the talk is around the game and stuff, it reinforces that in many ways, because everyone is always talking about the bosses. And obviously the base game, everyone talks about the bosses as well. But like, not many people are talking about the open world. Not many people are talking about the items you find. Not many people are talking about the new weapons. From
it's a less tight experience. It's not
a less tight experience.
Yeah.
And all of the areas that I go to explore is just like, I remember saying it on stream, like the last stream I did of it, it's like, what am I doing? Like, I'm riding around this like ravine area to the right hand side of the map near the start, and I'm just like, is there any point in me doing this?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what we opened the show with, talking about like forever games got to be open world.
Yeah.
Like, and you look at Elden Ring's success. Now, a lot of the success for Elden Ring was obviously like the iteration of the games they
Yes.
made before building to this. But like Elden Ring was the one that really got into the cultural zeitgeist in a whole new way. Over 25 million copies sold. I'm
Yes.
sure that, I mean, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like if there's over 25 million copies sold, I feel like this DLC will sell 10 million over
Yes.
lifetime.
Yeah.
Like this something about, the open world is, it makes people feel like they're getting so much more value. It makes people more engaged, I guess. But like for me and Joe, it's like in Sekiro, or even though I haven't beat Sekiro, I beat half the game, so I know it well enough, I guess. But like, or Bloodborne or whatever, that's the game where it's like everything has intentionality.
Yes.
Everything you do, like the place you're at, you're
Mm-hmm.
there for a reason. It's iterating on the gameplay. You're leveling the character. You move straight forward. You get to a boss that has new mechanics. You beat the boss. You move on to the next area. But Elden Ring is so much just like, here's all these places you can be and you can go. And that's, and like, I feels like it, I don't want to say watered down, because like, it's the same concept as watered down, except in this instance, it's like really good Gatorade with Elden Ring, because it's like, like, there's all this water that doesn't need to be there, but like, man, does it taste freaking good? So I don't mind, but
yeah. And I think the issue you have is like, I honestly think, right, this DLC would have worked better in the context of a player that has naturally started playing the game, got to Mog, or well, the usual route is you beat Radahn first because he's more accessible, then you beat Mog, Lord of Blood. You beat Mog, and it's like, oh shit, like, there's a DLC here. I've got the full package. Oh yeah, this is where we start the DLC. Okay, I'll jump in. And even though you don't level in this DLC for DLC sakes, for damage reduction, damage output, etc., you can still take those levels back into the the game you were playing, and that can push you forward easier up until the end. And I think in many ways, that's the intentionality behind this DLC for the longevity of this DLC. But I do think that the problem you have is that they could have just negated that issue immediately of me feeling like none of this is, there's no point to any of this in many ways. Like players that have done New Game Plus 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times, because they'll be having it much worse than I am in terms of how the game scales, because someone at New Game Plus 13 actually is much more in a difficult position than New Game Plus 1, such as myself and you, Brian, just because of the way the fragments work. But ultimately, like, here's the thing, like, I think you could have completely just negated that issue entirely by just having like a normal level system. I don't think you needed to have these fragments that fuck everything up and make the DLC useless to people that
so what
have no reason to play beyond the DLC.
What
Like,
Joe's referring to is like, they did something interesting with this DLC they haven't done with any prior DLCs, where when you enter the specific area for this expansion, you take way more damage and you do way less damage in that shadow realm than you would in the proper game. And the only way to get yourself out of that funk where your character is weaker is to collect these things called Erdtree fragments, and then also Spirit Ash fragments that will bring your they'll bring your stats back up to what they would have been prior to entering the Shadow Realm. They would bring your Spirit Ashes back up to what they would have been before entering the Spirit Realm. So the idea behind this is, and it makes sense. It makes sense because the idea is that you're going to have characters who are on the original playthrough. You're going to have characters on the first New Game Plus, and you're going to have characters on New Game Plus 13. And there's going to be characters that are 150, level 150, and there's going to be characters that are level 750.
Yes.
And because of the way Elden Ring's designed, where you can, have this open world, you can go all over the place and you can grind and you can be a super high level. They didn't want it to be that, everybody who's like level 700 is going to be able to come in, one hit every boss, and the DLC's over with.
Yeah.
So what they did was they just made it so that basically everyone's going to be at a level playing field when they enter this expansion. And it all comes down to you collecting the Erdtree fragments and the Revered Ashes fragments to get yourself up to a stronger ability in that DLC.
Yeah.
So it's a pro and a con. Like, I think the pro is that it levels everyone out again to have like a unique experience where it's super hard for everyone. Like, there's not going to be anybody out there who's like, well, I played Elden Ring for 500 hours, so I got to one hit everything. And since you only played it through once, it's going to be really tough for you. So that's nice, but then it does put you in this weird spot where like this almost does feel like an Elden Ring 2 more than ever because the map is not connected to the regular map at all, and your stats aren't either. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that because even though like players who are like 500 hours can't mollywop an enemy that like a level 70 or a level 100 can't necessarily. It's interesting because the person at level 500 who's done New Game Plus 5, 6, 7 times, like I've said previously, is at more of a disadvantage
It's even harder.
than the person at New Game Plus One
Yeah.
or non New Game Plus because ultimately, like the way it works is like you should stack Erdtree fragments every time in each in each playthrough you have to keep with the way the DLC scales, and you
Mm.
combine that with the way like the soft cap works for.
Oh wait,
I
wait,
mean,
wait! I'm confused. I figured you only had to get this. Like, if you were in the New Game Plus 13, I
no.
figured you only had to get Scatter Tree fragments one time.
So here's the thing, like the weirdest thing about it is, I mean, none of this is concrete because it's not clear as to how this exactly works in terms of the scaling because FromSoft have not, all they've
Mm.
said is get good. That's all Bandai
Mm.
Namco have said. But from what I can tell, because I have a friend who's on like New Game Plus 7 or something, or like even Gene Park, right? Because he was on like loads of
Yeah,
New Game Pluses.
he was the max level
Yeah,
750 or whatever.
yeah. They will have harder times because like in each of their playthroughs that they're meant to play, they're meant to do the DLC and get those Erdtree Skadu Erdtree
I didn't know it
fragments.
worked that way. I
Apparently
know. Yeah,
so. That is the way it works from what I've read around.
that feels broken then.
That's what I'm saying. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons why people, and like I said, if you combine that with the way the soft cap works, because enemies scale to your character level, but your skills soft cap at like,
Mhm.
well, depending, obviously there's multiple stages of soft capping with like decks. So you'll have like 20, 40, 60, 80.
Yeah.
Um, that massively impacts how this DLC works. And in
Okay.
general, like the game gets harder in general because your abilities soft cap as you go along anyway in the base game. So as far as I'm aware, it's like it's kind of pitted against people that are further along, like I said, in the progression, despite them putting hours and hours and hours.
Yeah,
And
if
I'm
what you're
all
saying is true, it's pretty bad
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
and I'm all for this like leveling out the playing field across the board. But I feel like if what I'm saying is true based on what I've heard, again, this is all hearsay in many ways, so take this with a pinch of salt. That has to be leveled out. The DLC always has to be
Yeah.
everyone's at the playing field. Not that New Game Plus 7 have it 15 times harder than New Game Plus 1 or
Yeah,
whatever.
no, I would agree with that. I didn't know this, so if that's the
Yeah.
case, I would agree with you. I think I can somewhat believe that because I listened to Gene Park talk about his experience with entering this DLC,
Yes.
and he entered this DLC as a level 700 something. And I don't
Mm.
know which enemy he was referring to because I don't think I found this enemy unless he just described it differently. But like he said that he went over to a common mob enemy that was like a naked guy or like a guy with barely any clothes.
Oh, he's in the field. So you know when you start,
Okay.
you take a right and you go off into that field.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
some shrubberies, some trees, and
Okay.
he's like a Wolverine guy. He is difficult.
Oh well, he said that he went over there to kick his ass and like he hit him and it took off like not even a tenth of his health, and then the
Yeah.
dude hit him twice and he died. And I'm
Yes.
like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like I have
No.
when I'm playing my
That dude.
character, I'm not penalized that much. Yeah,
That's not me either. Like when I fought him, that guy could hit me loads of times, and he has like a flurry attack where he like
yeah,
claws you up like Wolverine. Dude didn't. I mean, he killed me once because I wasn't ready for his moveset, but the second time I just stomped his ass into oblivion because I was ready
yeah,
for it.
yeah.
But he didn't do that much damage. So this is what I'm saying. It has like this weird scaling thing that's going on where I do feel like this is the thing. Like Wes and you have been going back and forth with like obviously review bombing and dropping scores on like
I was going to mention this.
yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but your defense or your stance in there was different than what you're saying here. Am I wrong? Because
So
what you're
here's the
saying
thing.
here makes sense to me, actually. Yeah.
So here's the thing. Like my argument originally, before I knew what I know now about the difficulty, is that people were review bombing on PC or review bombing, but like rating it down. I don't necessarily think it's review bombing. I don't know. It's a harsh word to use. The difficulty, which at the time I was like, well, yeah, like you're being bitches. Okay, fair enough. But like maybe there's more. I always err just in general. Is there more to this story than what we're foretelling, what we're talking about? And then the second one is obviously the PC optimization. I've had issues on the PS5 myself where like grass and stuff aren't loading in and stuff like that. And it just feels weird. Like the LOD's kind of poor. It's a nitpick, but it's definitely there. So like PC in general with FromSoft games normally come off worse when it
Mhm.
comes to their releases. Um, and so, but now that like this information has come out about how the Tree fragments and the ashes work, and the subsequent new game plus is actually putting you at a disadvantage, it's kind of like maybe there's something here in
Yeah,
what they're
if that's
saying,
true, then that
because
that would be fair. Yeah.
this is a genuine balancing concern for Elden Ring at this point. It's not a question of get good. It's a question of why are you punishing people that are way higher leveled and put so much more time into the game? Surely, if anything, they should be having it easier because of the
Well,
amount of stuff they're going on.
yeah, I mean,
So
it's less punishment and more just like you're putting them in a position where they've missed potentially 10 plus variations of grabbing the Tree fragments.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, which if yeah, and I think that's a fair reason to leave a bad review if you're like, this is so astronomically harder than it's supposed to be, something's wrong here. And that could be backed up by the fact that today there was a patch release that made the
Exactly.
first half of the DLC easier.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But I mean, I think back when we first had that conversation, it was and once again, this is all like he said, she's like,
Yes.
you and me were hearing what Wes said he had heard, and he's not playing the game. So like it goes 10,
it was all
10
Chinese whispers.
Yeah, exactly. But like if it was truly thousands of people leaving bad reviews because the game was hard in the sense that Souls is always hard, I would be like,
oh yeah,
okay.
100%.
Yeah, I would be like, okay, I agree that it's fine that Steam lets you do that, but morally, I think you're an idiot.
Yes,
because you are leaving a bad
yes.
review for a reason that is not fair. I think you're dumb, and you're allowed to do that, but I think you're dumb.
Yes.
But if they were leaving it because bad PC performance, fair. If they were leaving it because the game's actually broken because of the Tree fragments, also fair. But yeah, that was something I wasn't aware of. So
yeah, so
totally.
I mean, the way I see it and the way I'll end this, because like I still need to play more of Elden Ring's DLC because I am really liking it. Here's the thing, I do love it. It's fun. I'm playing it in many ways. I'm playing it like Sekiro,
Dude,
and I'm enjoying it.
Broke my brain too, because when I started the DLC, when you start off, you're in like this giant field with like crosses.
Yes.
And that's where I was thinking my brain's broken. I went, oh my gosh, he got this from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Something's wrong with my brain, because like I feel like everything I watch and play, I'm like,
it's close in design. It looks kind of like it, like that.
Well, there's that iconic scene from Neon Genesis Evangelion where it's like a sea of crosses, and it's like that's kind of what it looked like. So I'm like, damn.
And they literally call it crosses in the DLC.
Yeah, so I'm like, am I
the cross of Mikola?
Am I like high on it, or is this actually inspired?
No, Neon Genesis is massively inspirational. That's what's happening.
Crazy.
You're not tripping. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, dude, it's mind blowing. I mean, I'm so out of the loop with how like little parts of Elden Ring work that like I've been running around the map in the DLC, not collecting the map fragments. That's how out of the loop I am.
Ooh.
And it doesn't bother me. I just walk around this like blank map, and I go from like I literally use sites of grace as fucking waypoints. Like I'm literally like wandering through because I can do it. Like I can do it by memory because Dark Souls does it fine. There's no map in that. Like I think it's a cool way to play in many ways. But I'm like, wait a minute, why is my map not really revealing? And I literally had to Google because it's been like 2 years since I played this. Like I had to go and Google like why? Where's the map? Like when do I get to unlock the thing that actually looks like a map and not just an ink splodge on my screen?
Right.
So yeah, next time I play, I'm gonna go back and get them like an absolute goober. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I just wish it was. I honestly wish it could. This could have been linear. Honestly, this DLC, this could have been a linear Dark Souls type
experience. We could have had it in a year probably then.
Yeah, 100%. And I was saying this to you, like why? In many ways, like I didn't need this DLC, even though I was hyped as shit to play it. Now that I am playing it and I know what it is, I'm kind of like, I don't really need this. I
feel the same way. That's why I went back to Nier Automata.
Like, here's the thing: like, they kind of honeypotted me with like all the weapons and all these new items and these new areas and stuff and these new bosses. Yeah, but I think the thing that mattered to me the most was like maybe the progression side of it and just like the consistency from that to the base game once again, like kind of going back on itself, and it doesn't have any of that, and I just feel like it's just an inconsistent DLC experience that I dearly love and I'm having the greatest time with, but ultimately it's probably, unless it really picks up later on in terms of the scale and the bosses and everything in the world, potentially not in scale but just the uniqueness and setting it aside from its standalone stuff, I think ultimately it's not going to be a DLC that lasts with me. People are saying it's one of the best DLCs ever made and stuff.
A lot of these people probably never played other Souls games too. So.
yeah, I don't know if it's going to compare to the old Hunters. I don't know if it's going
No.
to compare to Blood and Wine or Hearts of Stone in
Yeah.
The Witcher 3 and the Shivering Isles and stuff. I don't think I'm at that point
I
yet.
mean, I
And
think its biggest benefit is that they're essentially selling you one of the. I mean, they're selling you a full game, and not just a full game, but a big game at that for $40.
yes,
You know, because
yeah,
this could have been like, think about times where we got like Dragon Age 2 or like games that were clearly like half cools that got made into full sequels. Oh,
indeed,
this could have been Elden Ring 2, and we would have all been able to tell like it was iterative and not quite as big as like maybe the first game, but it
yeah,
ultimately would have been a damn good game as Elden Ring 2. This might have still hit a 90 on Metacritic, or at least high 80s as full on Elden Ring 2. Like they
yeah,
decided to sell it as a DLC for $40, and I'm thankful for that.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's
So
been a good time. I'm looking forward to playing it more. But that's been my week in gaming in many ways.
yeah, dude. Yeah, Elden Ring's awesome. Let's make. I've definitely rushed through my questions very quickly before too. See if we can get your question done and answered in less than 10 minutes, and we can get out of here.
Mhm.
Joe, let's hear it.
So my question to you, Ryan, my special question of the episode is: you have to bring one legacy, iconic PlayStation IP back from the dead,
Okay.
but you have to kill indefinitely
Yes.
for this to live. You have to kill indefinitely a current iconic PlayStation IP. What is it,
Okay.
Ryan?
Here's what I'm gonna do, and this what I'm gonna do. My choice is like half for the PlayStation brand's health and half out of selfishness, and I'll explain myself. So this is gonna be crazy, dude. I'm gonna kill the Horizon franchise.
Oh, what a surprise!
But this is the crazy part. I'm gonna bring back Killzone. And the
Okay.
reason that's crazy is because I never gave a shit about Killzone. And every time I played Killzone, I didn't like it. And I thought Horizon wouldn't be any fun. And then it came out. And even though I'm not a fan of the Horizon games, I have played and beat and enjoyed both Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. But I'm not really a big fan of that series. I'm not really interested in that series. So I would be fine with it going away. And so the selfish part is me getting rid of Horizon, because I obviously it's a hugely profitable franchise for Sony. But the part that I'm doing for Sony's health is I think it would be amazing if they could get Killzone up to snuff as an amazing first person shooter. They don't have that. Call of Duty is now owned by Microsoft. Guerrilla obviously has the talent. I know some people love the original Killzone games. I thought it was always never up to like what I wanted it to be. But
No, no.
have Guerrilla use their best chops on making a 5-year development AAA amazing
Mm,
modern day Killzone with an amazing story and characters and multiplayer, and
mm.
have that be like the flagship first person shooter for the PlayStation. I'd rather have Guerrilla do that. And it's funny because I never enjoyed Killzone, and I did
No.
enjoy Horizon. The thing about Killzone was, even though I never enjoyed it, I'm like, this is a badass IP. Like,
Yeah.
awesome name,
Unique, cool.
awesome
Yeah.
villains. It's like that they need that slot on the PlayStation. They need that first
Yeah.
person shooter slot. Get rid of Horizon, bring me Killzone. I'm ready to hear yours, Joe. I'm very interested.
I would kill modern day Ratchet and Clank.
Okay. Yeah, we don't need it. It's good, but we don't need it. Yeah, okay.
Well, here's the thing: like modern day Ratchet and Clank is more successful than it's ever been. Okay,
Yeah.
like it's mind blowing. But I mean, I'll say what I'll bring back. I will bring back.
I hope you don't bring back what I actually wanted to bring back, because then I'll feel bad. Because
Okay,
I
no.
chose Killzone for the sake of the brand. But you go ahead.
I'm actually going to be really selfish. I'm going complete opposite to you. I'm not bringing it back from the brand. I'm bringing it back for me because
Okay.
I'm a piece of shit. Siphon filter.
Siphon filter. Okay.
Yes,
What
I want
is
to bring
that?
Day back.
Is that the Days Gone guys that did
Yeah,
that?
Ben Studio made 1, 2,
Okay.
and 3. Yeah.
If they made it good, I could see it being successful. I think the only way that IP could come back and hit hard is if it was just like truly exceptional. I don't think the
Yes.
IP name alone could do it.
Oh, the pretense of this question is that these are, the thing you bring back is spectacular. You're trading
Okay.
one critical
Okay.
darling for another in many ways.
Okay. Both Killzone and Siphon Filter. That'd be awesome
Yeah,
if they were awesome games. Yeah.
100%. And I think that, like, I don't know, dude. I think Siphon Filter coming back for me personally, alongside the Splinter Cell remake, toe and toe, Titans, of. I mean, Siphon Filter wasn't always as stealthy. It wasn't as stealthy as Splinter Cell. It never was. It had more action to it. But that Metal Gear and what's it called? Yeah, Splinter Cell was mind blowing for the time. You had the trifecta of stealth
Mm.
titans,
I
and
remember thinking Siphon Filter was a popular game when I was younger because
yeah,
it was. What was the most popular entry? I don't even know. Was it
I think it was
2?
one. No, one.
1? Okay, 1.
One.
Okay.
One was the most popular. But the
Was that
thing is the
PS1?
series. Yeah, the series is only sold 900,000 copies.
The whole series?
Yes, dude.
Oh, I thought it was more popular than that. Wow.
No, like it's really, really
How many
small.
games are there? I thought there was at least 3.
There's 3, and I think there's a portable version as well.
Wow, no wonder they
Yeah,
canned it.
yeah, dude. It didn't do very well. But yeah. So I would just love it back. I would love Siphon Filter back to compete with the remake that is Splinter Cell. I don't know, bring it back as a remake. Make it so
Yeah, you
like
might as well at this point.
Ben,
Yeah.
Ben Studio remakes that game completely from the ground up. Hopefully, kind of like Splinter Cell does, and hopefully well. And then you can have 2 massive titans. I mean, like in many ways, like if you compare that to the Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid Delta remake thing, Mabob, whatever they want to call it, Triangle.
Yeah.
Um, I think like you have like what sort of happened like a year or two ago, where Dead Space remake was coming out, Resident Evil 4 remake was coming out, and it was like, oh my god, this is fucking dope. Like the survival horror is picking back up. And yeah, I would love for that to happen. And you could honestly throw away Ratchet and Clank. The modern day Ratchet and Clanks are just
Yeah. We don't need Ratchet. I mean, that's no hate on Ratchet. I can't. I'm looking forward to actually playing Rift Apart. I
no,
just
no.
we don't.
I'm hating on Ratchet.
Oh, okay.
I'm
We don't need it.
looking for violence right now.
Okay, all right. You heard it here, guys. Come for Joe. He hates Ratchet.
I loved Ratchet and Clank 1 to 3. I loved
Yeah.
it. I even like Gladiator, even though it was like a stripped down, boring ass horde
Is that
version
what it was
of
called over there? Wasn't it called Deadlocked?
It was called Deadlocked over here, over where you are.
Okay.
It was, yeah. Every Ratchet and Clank has had a different name in Europe comparatively to the US. I don't know why.
Okay.
I think it's
What's up
a
your
rating
arsenal
thing.
called for you?
Fuck, I can't remember now.
Give me the names of any of them. Honestly, I just want to hear it.
I genuinely cannot remember the subtitles. I just know that Deadlocked was Gladiator. Hang on, let me.
Gladiator makes sense. I'm sad that you didn't get up your arsenal. That's a cool name.
Dude, they were always cool. Let me have a look here. Keep talking.
Okay, yeah. So it was up your arsenal. What was the first? What was the? I don't even remember. That's the only one I remember is up your arsenal. Because
Going Commando was Locked and Loaded.
Okay. Okay.
Terrible name change. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. They would change. You can find them online. I cannot remember the suffixes at all. But
you could just look up your arsenal. For UK. Like I'm interested because it's got to be. I want to see if it's funny. If it's like down your pee hole.
Was it just called Ratchet and Clank 3?
Is that the third one? I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me read this. I'm reading it on a forum. Well, it's for sure up your arsenal here in Canada, US, but there has been there's been confirmation of the name in Europe as far as I know. It could very well have a different name like Ratchet and Clank 2. Oh wow, this is from 04. I'm going back in time here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Ratchet and Clank 3. I don't think they changed it.
Okay.
They changed it to just that. Wow. Yeah.
Up Your Arsenal is such a badass name. I remember being a little kid and like not cussing ever, but thinking it was cool that I could say Up Your Arsenal.
yeah. It was literally called known as Ratchet and Clank 3 in Europe and Africa.
Wow,
and Ratchet and Clank 3 Up Your Arsenal. See, Australia. This is what's crazy. Australia, the country that banned Bully, has the name Up Your Arsenal. How does that work? How does that work, dude? But yeah, I'm guillotining. I'm not just sacrificing. I'm doing it myself. I'm the one I'm the executioner with this new Ratchet and Clank game because they are so the gameplay is great. Don't get me wrong. I love the gameplay of it. Same with the reboot that they did of the first game, but they have lost so much in kidifying everything about Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
They have lost so much of what made that game so special with the in-jokes and the adult stuff and then offset with the kid
Rift
stuff.
Apart still kidified? I thought maybe it was mature again.
Yeah,
Okay.
massively. Yeah.
Well, I guess they did that kids movie, so they got to go back that direction now. They got to go.
They just overly casualized it, dude, for the movie's sake, and then they had to stick with that for a long time because of the new audience. But yeah, dude, it's gone. It's gone. Bring on Siphon Filter. Let's have it.
Am I fair in saying this is off topic? Kind of. Well, it's on topic to me, but like, Killzone is a better thing to bring back than Resistance, right? Or did I pick the right one? Like, what's the cultural love for the franchises? I feel like Killzone's more liked than Resistance, but maybe I'm off. I don't know.
I think Killzone was more inconsistent.
Inconsistent and resistance. Okay.
Yeah, because Killzone 2 was where it peaked. Killzone 3 was pretty good. But Killzone 1 was a proof of concept in many ways,
Yeah.
and Killzone
Yeah.
2 was the point when it was like, this shit's fucking fire.
Yep.
That was the point where it really got in its stride. But
I've heard people
and
say the
then
only good resistance was 3. I'm not saying that's true. I just have heard that.
I don't know. It's been so long since I played them, dude.
Yeah. I've only played Resistance 3 and Killzone. I
Yeah.
think I played Killzone 2. Well, I played all 3 Killzones actually, plus Shadowfall actually. But
Yeah, Resistance Fall of Man
the
was
first one, yeah.
3. No, that was 3.
Fall of Man was the first one. At least in our country.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm
Resistance
getting it way wrong. I'm reading it way wrong. Yeah, Fall of Man was the first one, which was like really fucking good. 2, I remember being kind of like comparatively.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, that's we would actually, you guys should totally write in and let us know, or just come into the Discord or voice clip or whatever, and let us know which franchise you would kill to bring which one back on the Sony platforms. I don't think there's so many people that are going to like you killing Ratchet or me. Honestly, me killing. Honestly, me killing Horizon's probably worse. Horizon's a more successful franchise than
Oh
Ratchet,
yeah,
which is sad.
100%.
But
It sells boatloads comparatively. Oh, I was
I'd like to,
actually I have a correction for myself. It's not the first. It's the first Siphon Filter that only sold 900,000 copies.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. That makes more sense. Okay. You got any closing thoughts, Joe, before we get out of here? We actually have a lot to talk about for not there being that much news.
We did. I am baking right now. This room is so warm. I've got if you can see in the mirror on video, there is a light right here in front of me. There is a computer running. There are black blinds there that soak in the heat and push it into the room.
There's a piece of bacon that's on Joe's head that was raw when we started, but it's now cooked and crispy.
Yeah. It's so I'm gonna leave this room as quickly as possible before I pass out from heat exhaustion, heat stroke.
Totally.
I'm gonna go cut my hair because it's getting long on top.
Gotta go back to bald.
Yeah. Back to bald. Well, I mean, this is bald, right? Like I would say.
I don't know. Not quite.
It's kind of like Buzz, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's just grown out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hopefully play more Elden Ring. That'll be fun.
If I get time, I'm going to beat Nier Automata today. If I get time, if I don't, I think I'm getting Erica to rewatch Neon Genesis Evangelion with me. So I'm watching it again.
you say get like it's under duress.
Yeah, well, she didn't watch it with me. She was in the room a lot when I was watching it, and she never caught on to it. Yeah. But after I talk such high praise about it, she's like sitting and actually paying attention. And so far, she's like thinks it's all right. She hasn't caught it yet. But,
okay.
Yeah. So we'll see. But I'm excited. So I think I'm gonna actually go Google search after this. Shout out to the Erdtree, Neon Genesis Evangelion, to see if anyone's talking about that. So
oh my god,
I'm like obsessed with this show now. It's crazy that like Stellar Blade got me into this whole thing, but like out of Stellar Blade, Nier Automata, and Neon Genesis Evangelion is the one it's the thing I've fallen in love with the most. It's so good. I mean, I bought the whole Blu-ray complete series already. So
I mean, it set the foundation for anime going forward. So
I can't wait for you to watch it. I think you're gonna love it. I don't think you would love it immediately. I don't think you'll love it immediately. I didn't love it immediately. I think you got to get to the end, which it's only 26 episodes. So
yeah, and they're like 20 minutes pop, right? So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely not bad. But all right, guys, if you want to send in an email or a voice clip, send that to criticalframes@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, that's @criticalframes. Our boy Wesley is running that there. If you want to support us on Patreon, we're at patreon.com/criticalframes. We only have one tier there. It's a $5 tier, the all access pass. You get special Discord access to the channel, special Discord role. You get access to our Critical Frames Plus episode. We do one a month. Right now we have the Final Fantasy VII Remake episode posted. And you also get any question you send in at the end of the week, you get answered on the show, guaranteed.
Indeed.
Unless it's something heinously inappropriate. But even if it's kind of inappropriate, we'll probably still take care of you. But anything you want to ask us, we'll read on the show. So we'd love your support over there, guys. But we just love that you're here listening to us and supporting us. Leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. All that stuff is helpful. We really appreciate it. Give us a like or subscribe on YouTube. We're at Critical Frames on YouTube as well. We got the name locked down everywhere. It's awesome. This was a great episode. Make sure you get that Shadow of the Erdtree DLC because it's awesome. And it's like 60 hours of content. So support from software. They're one of the best.
Do it.
Any final words, Joe?
No, dude.
Sweating
Ready to
balls.
get out of here. Sweating balls right now. I need to go
Yep.
just lay down in the back garden because the sun's got in. And
And I'm gonna go eat spaghetti.
dude, I'm hungry, bro. It's like
Yeah.
it's like 8 p.m. here. Like I've not eaten since 12 today. So
I haven't eaten in 13 hours. So
you beating me.
yeah, got you there. So got you, bitch. No, I'm just kidding. But all right,
Got you,
guys.
bitch.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast, and we will look forward to seeing you all next week. Peace, guys.
Peace. Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast, is created in partnership between Bryan Arvett and myself, Joseph Smalley. It's available on all mainstream audio and video feeds, and all music featured in the show is by Caleb Webster. We're incredibly grateful to the following All Access Pass patrons for the support they've shown for this independent venture: Darren.jpg, Diente de Hombre, Music Tree 23, Mustard Chief, Trickster, and Wesley Types.